or welcome back to my channel. I appreciate you all and thank you for your wonderful comments lately. It's made me feel so good inside, you have no idea. I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. I have found the craziest, I'm not kidding, the best stories on our new sleep. U/JJX2525. Notes to the girl whose house I live in. It took me a week to find where you keep your Wi-Fi password. A whole week. I was really worried you'd thrown it away, but lo and behold, there it was at the cutlery drawer of all places. Who puts their Wi-Fi password in the cutlery drawer? Oh well. Everything about the way you organize confuses me. I guess because you live on your own now, you just put things in, well, any old place. I know there was someone else here before. I heard you talking about him on the phone. Johnny, I think. No, Jimmy. Anyway, I know because you said it was tough being alone. But you're not alone, of course you have me. There's a crack in your roof where I can see down onto the street below. Don't worry about the roof, by the way. Yes, it's pretty cramped, but I like my spaces small. I've actually stuffed a few things up there to make it smaller. Just bits and bobs from the recycling. I really don't think you're gonna miss them. I can sit with my face against the wall and see down onto the street. That's where I saw you meeting up with all those people wearing black. It would have been weird anyway because you never meet anyone, but they were all rubbing your back and holding your hand and stuff. I was scared you were going to bring them in, but you just went off together, so that was okay. I don't know what I would have done if the house had filled up with people. You know, it really explains a lot that there was someone else before me. Like the fact you have 2 sets of drawers in your bedroom, or how you're living in such a big house all by yourself. And you do weird things like leave the Wi-Fi in the cutlery drawer, or watch the same TV show all day on a weekend. But I'm not the one to talk. I mean, I'm addicted to my toys, like the little big lump of blue tack I found a little while back, which is great fun to fiddle with, but doesn't taste too good. Or the cigarette lighter that's fun to flick on and off. Or the tube that has all the patterns that you can change. I could look down at that thing for hours. I often have. That's what I normally do when you're home. Or I just sit back and listen to you doing the washing or running a shower or something like that. I crawl up the walls and hang there with my ear to the pipes and listen to the water rushing by. That kind of thing makes me happy, but you never have anyone around, so I got your schedule memorized. I can move around pretty freely. I know what we have. It's a symbiotic relationship. That means you help me by giving me a warm place house. There's no need to thank me. I fell asleep under the towels in your airing cupboard once before I found the roof, and I saw you trying to get rid of that one that was living under your sink with the broom. I've never seen so much ridiculous fuss in my entire life, but it makes no difference to me how many legs something has, so I just eat them up whenever I find one. And any other thing that makes its way into the house without my permission. Aside from myself, of course. Since I only pay rent and spiders, I try to keep the things I take to a minimum. But I can't say I feel too bad about stealing your socks. You have so many socks. Why would one girl need so many? I get a lot more out of them than you do anyway. I like to take them apart by the threads and then wrap all the threads around my fingers, and then I pull them really tight till the tips go purple. I can nibble my own fingertips and not feel a thing. It's pretty great, actually. I try to take as little food as I can. I found I can usually survive off the things you leave out or throw away. Why don't you eat banana skins? Oh, and another habit of yours that confuses me a lot. I like to open my mouth all the way and drop them whole, and I don't chew. I've never needed too much food to get by. I really, really like butter, though. Not to eat so much as just to play with. Once you left to block out by the window in the sun, and it went all melty while you were at work, I sort of started playing with it. Once I'd stuck my finger in. Once it was kind of hard to stop. I had it looking like a puddle by the end, but then I realized it was 5 o'clock and you were home to be home soon. So I had to press it back into a rectangle as best as I could. But then I heard you open the door. Boy, I was so startled. I went into the cupboard under the stairs. You know, the one you never go in as it's full of men's shoes and coats and things. And I watched you come in through the doorway. But then came the weird part. You know, you never even noticed the butter. All you did was make a cup of tea and then give up halfway through and start crying. Then you ordered a Chinese and you barely ate any before throwing it away. You see what I mean about your habits. I'm sorry, but it's just weird. Sometimes I'm having a bad night. I like to get under your bed while you're asleep. It's nice because I can hear you breathing. And then I can match my breath up with yours. I lie there for ages, gasping in and out as if you get up for the bathroom or anything, and I have to go completely still and hold my breath. I don't know why I do it. I guess it's fun. You're the first person whose company I've really enjoyed. You cooked dinner the other evening, I noticed, because you played music, which, you know, you never do. because as much as I like you, that they'd ruin everything and make me go all crazy like I used to be. I didn't know what to do. I was really ready to hurt them, really, really hurt them. That's how scared I was. But then you sat down, you lit the candle on the table, and started eating all by yourself. All by yourself. Nobody else showed up, and after you were done, you took the other food and threw it away. That just didn't make any sense. Even though I was relieved, I felt kind of bad. Even though I was relieved, I felt kind of bad. That the other person never showed up. You didn't seem sad, though. You know, it was like you expected it just to be you. After you went to bed, I went through the bin and ate some of the food you threw away. Oh, by the way, it was delicious. But you know, I knew something was wrong the next day because you didn't leave for work. And when you ran a bath in the middle of the afternoon, after you'd been in there for ages and ages, I started to get this horrible feeling. I crawled down to the landing. The bathroom door was open a crack, and I peeked through. I saw your hand. It was hanging, not in a natural way. There was this long red line going down it, and then I realized. I ran back upstairs. I'm a coward. I know I'm a coward. I hid under my pile of stuff and started to cry. I thought about running away. I thought about the color. A pink bath mat goes when it's covered in blood. I thought about how much I wanted to be somewhere else, but most of all, I thought about you and how little sense you make. What I'm trying to say is that I'm sorry I lit your roof on fire. It was the only way I could think to get people to come, and it actually worked better than I expected. That recycling stuff sure did burn. I ran down to the cupboard under the stairs and curled up with my hands over my head until I heard the click as they kicked the door down and carried you out. But there was a lot of confusion and bad language, but they found you, and I heard one say you were still breathing. So my favorite place in the whole world is gone now. Most of my things as well, though I did think to grab the pattern tube. The rest is just a big black wig on top of your house. But I'm not scared. You'll get better, and when you come back, I will still be here. I don't think it's nice to be alone. That some of these can get gruesome, and some of them have the abuse and CA in it. So just if you're sensitive to any of that, these are not true stories though, so just keep that in mind. But there is sensitive material. I should have warned you about the unaliving part, but she lived, so on to our next one. This one has some CA in it. An R nosleep U/albiter. Eggshells. Oh, I don't know where to start. I know where I want to go, but not how to get there. How do you introduce something like this? How do you set it all up? How do you get from point A to point B? When point B is bigger than anything, than everything. If that makes any sense. I just want to talk about what happened that day on the subway, because that's all I think about. That's all I can think about anymore. Every single minute of my life, it's the only thing that goes through my mind. It's all I hear when I dream. It's all I dream about because there's nothing else anymore. It's like I'm stranded in time on this one moment, and there's no past or future anymore. It's just the 2 minutes on the subway with that man. I would give anything to get away from this horrible moment, but I can't stop reliving it. And this sound, the sound is always there, and I am always hearing it. And I wish I could make it stop. I don't know what else to do except vomit up this and cast it out and hope to God that maybe this will turn the machine off, stop the wheels, and let me sleep for just a little while. It was early and I was eating a bagel. A sesame seed bagel with strawberry cream cheese. There was a bit too much cream cheese in the middle. You know, the kind that's so full that it fills the top and comes out. I remember every single detail, and I feel nothing but sympathy and pity for the woman I read about once who can remember every detail of her day. Hell is in the details. I was holding the bagel with a piece of wax paper because I was wearing my new suit. And if I wasn't careful, I'd get it filthy. The drain had just left Grand, and it was full. I was paying attention to no one else, because my bagel was the most important thing to me right at that moment. Isn't that ridiculous? Nothing else in that moment, not the person across from me, or the baby crying 3 rows down, or the man jiggling his foot was more important than that damn bagel. I took a bite and was wiping my face when something about the way the person behind me whispered made my ears prick up a little. Maybe it was the fact that he said it quietly on a crowded train, on which you can't hear yourself think, let alone talk. Or maybe it could have been that he said it right in my ear. Although I don't think he meant to. Either way, I turned my head back to the right and felt my stubble scrape along my collar. What? I asked, swallowing. He was a young, good-looking black man, and he was grinning. He looked from the woman sitting next to him. He raised his eyebrows at me. That guy over there, he looks like he's going to flip out. He hooked his thumb back and leaned to look down, and I leaned to look down the aisle. It was a man, just another man in a suit, just similar to mine. But his foot was jiggling up and down, and his arms were crossed. I remembered reading somewhere that was a sign of hostility. He was glowering at the person across from him, and that's when I actually heard the baby crying. Isn't that amazing? I'd completely tuned it out until that exact moment, but once I'd heard it, I couldn't ignore it. A young Hispanic woman was cradling a baby, probably no more than 3 weeks old. The poor thing was squalling. Babies like that sound like kittens, don't they? Like very angry kittens. Or she was wearing a loose brown coat was, but he couldn't stop looking at her. We should have known then. We should have all known that something was wrong. That no one looks at anyone like that with anything but bad intentions. But we didn't do anything. We sat there and waited to see what he would do. You know, in all of us, there's that little black thing that thrives on seeing people do terrible things. That black thing that just eats it up. Loves watching the news and listening to true crime and knowing all of the bad stuff, the darkness. It just loves knowing that the person is going to suffer for what they've done. Stupidity is a drug that we put right in our veins, and it goes right into the heart of that little black thing, and it loves it for us. His foot went up and down, and up and down, and he said something under his breath. There was sweat rolling down his face. The baby let out a loud screech, and a few people turned to look, but this man, he shoved his fingers in his ears and bent his head down and planted his feet on the floor. His whole body moved with the tapping of his legs, and I frowned. I was still holding my bagel, but I'd forgotten about it because I was thinking about what a display he was putting on. It would only be a matter of minutes, I thought, before he would start ranting about how babies shouldn't be allowed in public. No doubt he had places to be. He seemed like a very important person with very important business to attend to, and he had no time for little babies that were tired or scared or hungry or whatever it was that was upsetting the little creature in the pink blanket with bunnies on it. Mom slung the baby over her shoulder and patted its back. But the baby kept squalling in big hiccups, and now more people were watching this man who still had his fingers stuffed in his ears and was singing now to himself. I heard a snippet of the lyrics, and the song played in my head. Take me out tonight where there's music and there's people who are young and alive driving in your car. I never want to go home because I haven't got one anymore. There was a person next to him that got up and moved farther down the train, shooting him a nasty look. But the man wasn't paying any attention. He was hunched over, his fingers in his ears, singing and rocking. Baby was cradled in Mommy's arms, waving his little tiny hands around and grasping at nothing. Yo, that dude's on something, man. Crazy. He's crazy. The young man beside me commented. I felt a blob of cream cheese fall out of my bagel and onto my wrist, but something very interesting was happening to the man. It was as if I was hypnotized, and I found that I couldn't look away. His rocking increased until the people next to him loudly commented on it, and from where I was, I could see that there was blood on his fingers, running down his neck and onto the white of his shirt. I thought, dang, he's really got his fingers in there, doesn't he? moment of it. The baby let out a final ear-splitting screech, Mom desperately shushing it, and the man leaped out of his seat. He was so fast none of us had any time to react. We just watched, spellbound, as he ripped the child in the blanket with the rabbits on it and held it to his face. He screamed at it, and the child screamed back. And in a fluid motion, he raised the child in one hand. For a moment, it was beautiful. The blanket fell away, and the child, which he held by the chest, was lit from behind by the light of the ceiling runners. The man's suit jacket flared open around his chest, extending behind him like strange wings. And he craned his head to look up at it, and for that moment there was grace and stillness, and we watched him. The whole train mesmerized at the strange beauty of the scene that we could not comprehend. And then the moment ended, and with all the strength that man had, he threw the baby to the ground, and with one shiny black wing-tip he stepped upon his head and crushed it. There was a splatter of very pale red, and it sounded like the cracking of an eggshell. The train was very still. It was quiet. The only sound was the wheels against the metal of the rails below us. The train swayed. Mom's arms were outstretched slightly. Her hands cupped. Her eyes were downcast that an image of the Blessed Virgin could not have matched the reverence in which her fingers curled against the empty air. The man, his shoes still upon what remained of the child, breathed heavily, blood running out of the ear that I could see. We were all very still. Then the mother began to scream, and an explosion of movement around the man, like the flurry of birds taking flight, startled him and caused him to blink rapidly. His face lost color and sagged, and his eyes went wide with shock. He lifted his shoe, which was caked in tissue and blood and hair and pieces of skin. The pieces of skin which were stuck to the bottom of his shoe. His shoe lifted the tiny body up slightly. He reeled back, and his legs struck the bench behind him, which he fell upon with all his weight. Chaos. Absolute chaos. The mother fell upon her knees and cradled the broken body. She screamed, and there was more pain in those screams that anyone has ever known. The young man behind me shouted something, got to his feet, and ran over while his female companion collapsed in a dead faint into the aisle. Several people grabbed the man, who clutched his chest. His eyes rolled and his face hung off his skull, and he was saying something, saying it over and over. I was not aware of moving closer, but I must have, because I could smell the acrid stink of him, and I could hear what he was saying. What did I do? What did I do? It's never been that bad before. What did I do? He tried to break out of the cluster of the hands holding him to reach for the mother, who reared away and brought her child to her chest. The blood was pink, and it stained her coat, and absurdly I wondered if it would ever come out. I remembered reading somewhere that blood could be removed with common soap, and I wanted to tell her this, but when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. I was still holding my bagel full of pink cream cheese, and she looked at it, and her wailing tore was the sound of someone else yelling into a phone. Oh my God, I have a condition. I'm sorry, please. What did I do? The bagel was soft in my hand when I crushed it in the cream cheese covered my fingers in palm, and I dropped it, hissing as if it were hot. What did I do? Oh my God, what did I do? From outside the windows came the flicker of lights in the next stop. A crowd was waiting at the edge of the platform, and I thought how lucky they were that policemen were there to push them back so they would never bear witness to the end of the world. And all the while the mother split the air open, and the man continued to cry out against the hands that held him to the seat. What did I do? What did I do? The man and the mother, it was a terrible, terrible symphony. For me, there is no past or future. There is no softness or joy or taste. I am stranded at the end of the world where there is nothing, where there can never be anything. In my dreams, I hear the cracking of eggshells. U/easy. At the drive-thru at Starbucks. I'm from a small town. I mean a small town. Nothing much happened other than, well, take your tractor to work day. I was a high school senior in the class of 42 people. We all had known each other since diapers. I can give you the first, middle, and last name of every kid in my class. The biggest thing to happen to our town was the day we got the Starbucks. And the only reason we got one was that we were right off the highway and people passing through would make up for our small population size. Needless to say, we were thrilled. It was a small cafe with nothing much of an inside, but at least it had a drive-thru. The building itself was stacked right next to a strip mall, so it did have a tiny parking lot. The actual drive-thru was pinned against a brick wall. Once you were in line, you had no choice but to keep going. It's Starbucks' favorite way to make sure you don't back out and change your mind about paying outrageous prices. That's my guess anyway. Because once you were in line, you had no choice but to keep going. This is especially annoying when the people in front of you had long orders. The line could fit about 6 cars back to back, and it was always full. Always full. Let me just say that Starbucks didn't last long. 8 months after it opened, it was shut down. I got to see the reason why firsthand. It was spring break. My mom and I were heading to the mall, which was almost an hour away. It was so hot. I was the one who suggested we stop at the Starbucks before heading out. My mom did not want to. She said it was a waste of money, but I nagged and nagged and nagged until she agreed. We pulled up to this drive-thru and there were 4 cars ahead of us. My mom sighed, but she got in line. We were all stuck like peas in a pod, sweating the heat of the day. I want something cold, I whined my mom. She rolled her eyes. Strawberries and cream, I guess, right? Yes, please. I pulled out my phone and Snapchatted some of my friends. Getting fraps with mom. I typed snapped a pic of us. My mom laughed and pushed the phone away. Suddenly a loud pop, 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 pop filled the air. We looked at each other in surprise. "It sounds like a gunshot," I said softly. "No way," she responded, shrugging it off. "It was probably just a car backfiring." We sat in silence for the next few moments. I think we both sensed something had changed. Then the scream came. A man's instinctively. I stuck my head out the window to see what was going on because of how packed in we were against the buildings. We couldn't actually open our doors, but I was small enough that I could get half my body out of the window to view the scene. There was a figure standing in the hood of a car. It was about 4 cars ahead of us. He wore a gorilla mask. In his hands was a gun. He had it pointed down towards the windshield. Someone inside the car was screaming, begging for help. My mother pulled me in the car right before. Another pop filled the silence. The windshield shattered, and it lit up the alley in fear. "We need to get out of here," my mom said under her breath. She looked around wildly, knowing we were blocked in. The cars behind us were not moving, and obviously neither were the cars in front. None of us could open our doors. "What the I whimpered. "Honey, it's going to be okay." My mom put the car in reverse and slammed on the gas because we weren't moving. We couldn't get enough speed. She struck the car behind her, which faltered but didn't move. My mom's panic was growing worse. She tried going forward, but the same thing happened. We could see the people in the other cars panicking as well. The woman in front of us was banging the door against the brick of the building, trying desperately to climb through. She managed to edge halfway out, but got stuck. The man in the mask calmly climbed over the car he had just shot into and moved on to the next one. I watched in horror as he tapped on their windshield. There was a couple in the front seat. I could see them holding on to each other in dismay. "Roll down your window," the masked man said loudly. The seconds ticked by. People in the cars around us were screaming. My mom and I were quiet. "Roll it down. Now." The driver's side window slowly rolled down. We heard a man's voice from the car. Please, we have kids in the car. Please don't hurt us. We are good people, please." The masked man leaned over towards the open window and shot the couple 2 times. Blood erupted from the car. Their windows were painted red. Now we could hear the cries of their children. My mom grabbed my hand and swallowed slowly. "Get down," she said. "What?" I couldn't comprehend what was happening. "Get down as far under the seat as possible. Do you understand me? He may see you." "But Mom." My words were interrupted by a chorus of shots, and the kids' cries ceased. Without another word, I folded myself into the space under the dashboard. I got as small as I possibly could. My mom angled her purse next to me, nearly covering the spot I was in. Her breathing was hard, and I could hear it from underneath there. A woman's voice was piercing the alleyway. Why? Why are you doing this?" I realized it must be the woman trying to get out of the car that got stuck between her car and the wall. I shut my eyes. I tried not to picture her hanging there, just waiting to be shot down. Even my mom looked away as the shot rang out and blood sprayed everywhere. My mom braced herself against the steering wheel. She looked ahead as if entranced. I sobbed quietly. I could feel the man jump onto our car hood. His footsteps were loud right above us. I glanced towards my mother. She didn't dare look at me. Everything about her was in Mama Bear protective mode. The gorilla mask hung down over the open window of my mom's side. The gun was pointed at her temple. I couldn't see his face, not his real face, but I got the feeling he was smiling. My mom suddenly reached out and grabbed the gun. I nearly knocked my head against the dashboard in surprise. The man must have been surprised too, because the gun came easily out of his grip. She aimed upward and pulled the trigger. She shot him as many times as she could before the bullets ran out, blood dripping down the windshield and all over her clothes. The mess was covered in holes. She kept pulling the trigger even though nothing came out. Oh, I breathed a huge sigh. I couldn't believe she just did that. My mom, a small town housewife, just killed a murderer. But before I could crawl out, another pop sounded. It came from my side of the car. I watched in horror as my mother's head exploded out of the back of her skull. She fell forward onto the steering wheel, her nose on the horn. I slowly turned my head to my side of the car, where someone was wearing a Barbie mask and peering down. She cocked her head to the side, surveying her work. She must not have seen me because she moved on. I felt her step off her car onto someone else's. I tried to breathe, but nothing came out. I stayed under my seat for nearly an hour. The police arrived within 20 minutes of the first shot, but I couldn't get myself to move. They only found me after using the jaws of life to open up the top of our car to pull my mom out. When the officer saw me, his face crumpled and tears were in his eyes. She could see the fear still etched onto my face. That day I was the only survivor from the drive-thru. Altogether, 13 people were shot to death, including 3 kids under the age of 10. The man in the gorilla mask was later identified as a radical eco-terrorist. They planned this event to protest Starbucks' impact on the environment. Despite their intent, no one at Starbucks who worked at Starbucks had been even injured. It was just those of us in the drive-thru line. They never found the other person. My mom died bravely, and I cling to that. Never in my mind, in my life, would I have expected her to grab a gun from a crazed killer. She did it for me. She did it to save me. There's one thing that still eats me up inside, because despite their horrible actions, all of the death and destruction those murders caused, the quote event unquote actually worked. At least for me. I know I will never go to Starbucks This one is a little bit gruesome, a little bit on the dark side. It's quite intense. It's the Bloodworth saga, and maybe you all have heard about it, but it's under nosleep index. And somebody reposted this, so I wanna get it recorded before they take it down. By you, Bloodworth. And who posted it was No Sleep Binder Butler. I mean, this is going back 12 years ago. So part 1, the title is The One That Got Away. When I met Jani, it was love at first sight. I know that sounds stupid and immature. I get it. But it was. I saw her, my heart melted. There was one problem, though. I'd been dating her mother, Meredith, for almost a year. Yeah, that doesn't sound real good. I know. Don't grab where you eat. I get that now. Trust me, I've learned my lesson. But I was a different person back then. How did you not see Jani until later on in the relationship? Why didn't Meredith introduce you earlier? Well, Jani wasn't ever around. Anyways, I knew Jani loved me as I loved her, but she would never reciprocate those feelings. I never tried anything when Meredith was around, but when she was gone, I would ask Jani to run away with me, to be with me, to love me. Jani's answers were always infuriating. She never seemed that interested. She usually just ignored everything I said, playing hard to get. I would end up yelling, and she would end up screaming. A match made in heaven, right? Sometimes, when the anger bubbled over, I would grab her shoulders and shake her like a rag doll. She would just scream louder at me. She was kind of cute when she got all red in the face and that vein in the middle of her forehead stood out. But like I said, it was infuriating. Meredith and I fought sometimes, but it was nothing like the fights Jani and I would have. I think it was just that I loved her so much and she never returned my love in the way I needed it. Sometimes Jani would just start screaming at me for no reason. Guys, you know what I'm talking about. You come home after a long day at work, but you forgot to bring food with you and you were supposed to remember. A simple mistake, don't lie. You know you've done it before. The last big fight that Jani and I had before I split was the worst. Meredith was at some stupid film festival downtown. She said that if she didn't get out of the house, she'd go crazy. She needed to reconnect with her girlfriends, have some girl time, or whatever. That was fine with me. I liked being alone with Jani. I liked to think that Jani liked me being there too. So I left the house for a little to go rent a DVD for Jani. And I to watch. I came home to a full-on screaming and screeching. The whole nine. The curses came. Jani was using didn't even register because I couldn't understand a damn thing she was saying. I guess she didn't like the DVD I picked. Like usual. I tried to calm her down. I told her I'd run out right then and get a different movie. Something better. It wasn't a big deal. I could fix it. She wasn't having it though. She screamed at me even louder. I told her I loved her. I got down on my knees and begged for her to calm down, to just stop screaming at me and love me for once in her goddamn life. I'm typing this through blurry eyes as I think about it. Mainly tears groceries, chopping onions, all that. Janie wouldn't stop screaming at me, though. No, she just wouldn't stop. I hugged her to my chest and told her it would be okay. We could be together. We could be happy together. She screamed even louder right in my ear. So I threw her against the wall. Janie was tough. I thought she could take it. But I heard something crunch when she hit the wall. She fell the 5 feet to the ground, her head cracked against the tile. It's messed up, but I started laughing. Have you ever opened your mouth in a big O and knocked on the top of your skull with your knuckles? That's the noise her skull made as it cracked against the tile. I just left her there. I left her there on the tile, the blood pouring from her ears and nose soaking into her jammies. I called Meredith and told her that there had been an accident. I told her I dropped our baby girl. Oh, these are serious. I mean, it's like something that you'd never dream about in a million years, but it's well written. Look more. Once you start, you don't stop. At least that's what my therapist tells me. I guess it's solid advice, but I'm not so sure. I've never told anyone except him what I'm about to tell y'all, so bear with me if things get confusing. He said it would be good to air out my feelings, that I would feel like the weight I've carried for the last year would be lifted. Before it, no, I have to own it. Before the R word happened, I was a poet. I was published in 3 magazines, 8 quarterlies, 0 books, and 6 collections. I wasn't anything big. I spent a lot of time at my computer drowning in my own words, trying to sew together meaning where there was absolutely none. Then it all stopped when I met Kevin. Yes, that's his real name, and it feels good to say it. It feels good to get that out. We met at a bar 2 days after Halloween. There's a lot of weirdness in Austin, and one thing that happens is post-Halloween costume parties. I guess it's part of the whole keep Austin weird thing. Gonna take a drink. I felt fine. Honestly, I really just wanted to snuggle up on the couch with my dog Ringu and watch a few Doctor Who episodes, maybe even hammer out the dings in a few stanzas of the piece I was working on. You know, Laura had told me to quit being a drama queen and come out. I told her that if I wanted to come out, I still didn't have a costume. She told me that I could be a slutty poet. I told her that she could go screw herself. She laughed, I laughed, and we made plans. I decided to dress up as a gypsy. I wore a peasant skirt, a loose button-up shirt, bandana, and big hoops in my ears. And everyone thought I was a pirate. Whatever. That was fine with me. I know, I'm stalling. Let's get to it. Enter Kevin. He must have been standing next to me for quite a long time before I even noticed him. Much too long now that I think about it. He must have singled me out from across the bar or seen me as he walked in. Because thinking back, I can't remember a moment when he wasn't standing next to me. I made solid eye contact several times. He was cute, hoping that he would get the hint and strike up a conversation. I'm kind of shy, and I'm really good about the eye contact, but breaking the ice nice has never been my... Sorry, I'm stalling again. So eventually Kevin asked if he could buy me a drink. I gave him a smile and said, sure, why not? The bartender set the drinks in front of Kevin. He paid and turned to hand me my drink right when I brought up my hand to take it. It spilled all down the front of my shirt and skirt. Luckily, the glass didn't break. I bent down to pick it up. So when I stood back up, Kevin's face was on fire. I'd never seen anyone turn so red before. He apologized for hours, it seemed. He gave me his beer and ordered another. I thought that was mighty chivalrous of him, so I stuck around. Laura and my friends left, though. They wanted to go dancing, but I really didn't feel like it. After that, things got hazy. It sucked having beer spilled on me, but what I was going to do. It wasn't like he did it on purpose. We ordered one more round at last call, and I spilled beer on him. Yeah. We both thought it was hilarious. I bent down to try to clean it up, but Kevin pulled me up and gave me his beer. But that one hit me really hard. Fast forward to my place. I don't normally take boys home, but Kevin was cute, and I hadn't had a good toss in the hay in a while. He didn't have a condom, though, and I hadn't expected this whole thing, so I didn't have any around the house either. We were way too drunk to drive to Walmart to buy some. He said that we could still have sex. He told me that he was clean and he'd pull out. I told him that I didn't know him well enough to have unprotected sex with him. He pouted for a little, but I snuggled up behind him and whispered in his ear that we could go get condoms in the morning. He sighed and we went to sleep. I woke up an hour later, maybe 2, and he wasn't in bed. His clothes were still on the floor, but he wasn't in my room. I heard rummaging in the kitchen and figured Kevin must have gotten that thing that Laura always called the drunken hungries. I smiled at that, threw on my robe. I didn't really put it together that Ringo wasn't in my room. He always sleeps at the foot of my bed. If I get up at night to pee, he follows me to the bathroom to wait outside. I figured he must have gone out to the kitchen to beg for food from Kevin. It seemed logical at the time, but the closer I got to the kitchen, the louder that rummaging sound got until it no longer sounded like rummaging. It sounded like someone pounding something against the tile. I got closer to the kitchen and the pounding noise intensified. I could hear a grunt with every dull pound of the noise. I walked into the kitchen and my mouth felt open. What I was seeing didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. Ringo was on the tile, a puddle of blood under his snout. Kevin was on the ground too. At least it looked like Kevin. A large, pantless man was on top of him, grunting as he thrust his hips and pounded Kevin's face against the tile. The man's eyes flicked up to me and I froze. As he pulled up Kevin's broken face up to look at me as well, I saw a second, darker mouth yawn wide across Kevin's throat. The man slammed Kevin's face into the tile. And final time as he tensed mid-thrust with a heavy grunt. He growled at me through clenched teeth and long strands of saliva dripping off his chin. He said 2 words. Look. More. He stood up and slid Kevin's body aside with his toe like you push a bag of trash out of your way. Something screamed inside of me and my adrenaline finally kicked in. I ran for my life. I didn't run upstairs or to my room. I ran man screaming at the front door. I tried to get lost in my own neighborhood, running through backyards, pounding on every window and door I could find. People called the cops and they picked me up in their squad car. They took me to the station to wait while they searched everywhere for the man. But they never found the guy. He left plenty of DNA in my house, but it didn't match any in the cops' database. The man left me a note, though. It read, "See you next year. Look more." That was exactly 1 year ago today. I've been in therapy ever since. My therapist said that someone would probably ask for one of my poems as proof, so here it goes. His edible lead pastrami meets earthen pepperoni, root inside some over-slow nun's executioner. Rue the hero, hey, eat our word apple, promo, innuendo. Slut, dart, incubi, scenario. Review at a pain, ideal, septic taxi. Yes, I'm not really sure what that means or messages or whatever I'm trying to get across in this poem, but whatever. Take the first letter of each word in the poem and you get, help me, prisoner. Therapist is a rapist. So, in retrospect, it was the therapist. The soul game. First, I need to apologize to you. I'm so sorry I'm coming to you in my time of need. Please help me. Please read this to the end. That's it. That's all I ask. I don't know what to do or where to turn. So, nosleep, please just help me. That's all I ask. My name is Andrea, and I'm a single mother. I don't tell you this like it's some badge of honor, and I'm expecting milk and cookies, chocolate-covered snowflakes like most of the others in my social world. They would want your pats on the back, and recognition. I just want a little bit of your time. I see motherhood as a burden, necessary, yes, still a burden. My son's name is Jesse. He's 11. That's 5th grade for the math haters. Jesse started the 5th grade this year like any other kid would. There was a little bit of trepidation and lots of excitement. He was a happy-go-lucky sort of kid, full of life and energy. But that day changed after he met Stan on Tuesday. Stan was a late addition to Jesse's class, a transfer student from another district. Jesse's teacher sat Stan right next to Jesse. When I picked Jesse up after school on Tuesday, he told me that Stan was his new best friend. But he wasn't acting like himself, though. He was pale and sweaty. I took his temperature, but he wasn't running a fever. I asked him about his day, and all he would tell me was that Stan was his new best friend. Stan's my new best friend, Jesse would say. I know, honey, I can't wait to meet him, I'd say back. Mom, Stan is great. You should meet him. He's my new best friend. The best in the world. We must have had this conversation 1,000 times that night when I tucked Jesse in bed. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. He put his little hand in front of his face and wiggled his index finger, telling Jesse off, he got this really weird look on his face and told me that he didn't want to go in. Why, honey, are you feeling sick? No, he said. He was chewing on his bottom lip like crazy. Something else I'd never seen him do. No, I need to go to school. He opened the car door and got out. No goodbye. No I love you. Nothing. He trudged up the front of the school with his head down. I let off the brake, turned away to drive to work. A little boy was standing right in front of the car. 2 more seconds, I would have run him over. The boy was pale with a mop of blonde hair that it was almost white and blue, bright blue eyes. He knocked on the hood of my car twice, waved once, and walked up the stairs to school. When I picked Jesse up after school on Wednesday, he looked a lot better. A tiny bit paler than normal, but he seemed happy. He told me all about his day. He told me about dinosaurs, music, and math. But then he told me about recess. And that after math period, we had recess. Mom, you'll never guess what I did today at recess. Tell me, I said, smiling to myself as I'm driving. I'm thinking tag, football, keep away, all the things I remember the boys doing at recess when I was that age. Something benign, something normal. I joined a church. What? A church at recess? Jesse nodded. Yeah, the Church of Stan. I thought it must be some sort of new make-believe game that kids are playing. Honey, what is the Church of Stan? It's Stan's church, Mom. Jesse laughed like I was the silliest person in the world for even asking such a question. Duh. Okay, I said, what do you guys do though? I mean, as members. Oh, lots of stuff. Today, though, we just listened to Stan talk. He was saying some funny words and I got sleepy and dozed off. A bunch of us did. I pulled into the driveway at home and we got out. Was that it? I asked. Things sounded weird for sure, but the kids didn't seem to be doing anything wrong. Yes, Dan gave us flyers too. He pulled out a crinkled piece of paper and handed it to me. It was a piece of manila paper with 3 words written in black marker. Church of Stan. Again, weird, but nothing wrong. I just thought the boys were playing make-believe. But I was wrong. When I picked up Jesse after school yesterday, I could tell that something was very wrong with my little boy. He looked panicked and scared. What's going on, honey? I asked, reaching out to feel his forehead. No fever. We played this whole game today, he said. Jesse's head was on a swivel. He couldn't sit still. He kept looking all around as we headed home. The soul game, I asked. Jesse nodded. And trying to look everywhere at once, beads of sweat dotted his upper lip. Okay, honey, what's the soul game? Jesse shook his head no and said nothing. Jesse, what's the soul game? I asked. I told him I didn't want to, but he said he wouldn't be my friend anymore if I didn't play. Honey, who wouldn't be your friend? Where were the teachers? Jesse started breathing harder, but still answered. It happened in church, he said. Then he whispered, teachers aren't allowed in the church. Stan? I asked. Jesse nodded, and a tear slipped down his cheek. What's the soul game, Jesse? I'm your mother. You tell me right now, and I'll take care of everything, I said. I can't tell you, Mom. I can't. The rules are bad. They're so bad. What about Stan? I asked. Will Stan tell me the rules? No, Jesse screamed, and this scared me half to death. Don't you dare ask the rules. Please, Mom, please, don't ask him. I pulled into the driveway, scared and confused. Promise me, Mom, promise me, please, 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 please. Jesse was bawling, now terrified. I took him into my arms and rocked him. I had rocked him like that since he'd been in kindergarten. He fell asleep in my arms and I carried him inside. I took him straight to his room and got him ready for bed. He just needs sleep, I kept telling myself. All he needs is sleep. I put him to bed and ate dinner alone. I checked on him around 9 when I went to bed. He seemed to be sleeping well, so I decided to go to bed. I woke up to him screaming at the top of his lungs 18 minutes after midnight last night. I ran to his room, but he wasn't in his bed. I turned on the light and Jesse came flying out of the closet like something was chasing him. He latched onto my leg and kept screaming. I tried to calm him down and ask what was wrong at the same time. He wasn't making any sense. He kept screaming, "The soul game, Mom, the soul game." He was impossible. I kept asking him what that was, but he wouldn't tell me. I tried to put him back in his bed, but he would have none of it. Finally, I just took him to my room and he slept in my bed. Jesse fell right to sleep. I was lying on my side, looking at him, watching him, stroking his hair when his eyes popped open and he stared into mine. "I'll tell you the rules after school tomorrow, lady," he said. Then he closed his eyes. What in the world is going on with my kid? I stared at the ceiling for a long time before rolling over to my side and staring into the bathroom. You know, when you're on the edge of sleep, sometimes your leg will kick and jerk you awake. Or you'll imagine you're falling. Or that you've just tripped over something and get jerked awake. That happened to me all last night, only I kept being ripped from sleep by seeing something in the doorway to the bathroom. Every time my eyes would start to slip shut, I'd see the dark outline of something large in the doorway jerk awake. Of course, nothing would be there and I would start falling asleep again. The outline would appear in the doorway once more, but it would be closer to me, like it had taken a baby step. Over and over this happened until morning. This morning on the way to school, Jesse seemed out of it, lethargic. I felt the same way. I was even more exhausted. I thought of asking Jesse about what he said the night before he fell asleep, but I couldn't. I was afraid it would send him into hysterics, so I left it alone. I drove him to school and he didn't say a word the whole time. He was acting like a robot, listless, unemotional. I got a call shortly after dropping him off to come pick him back up. He vomited in class. When I picked him up, he was the same. I asked him several questions, but he only gave me grunts in response. The plan at home was to get him changed out of his dirty clothes and then take him to the doctor. He didn't say anything until we pulled up. Stan come over today?" he asked. He stared out the windshield at the garage door. "Honey, you're not feeling well and you don't really want him to come over," I asked. I wanted to meet this kid, but it didn't sound like Jesse wanted him over. I, however, wanted to get to the bottom of things. "Yes," Jesse said. "Okay. Do you have his parents' number?" He already has his parents, and they said it was okay. "We have to wait until he's out of class, and I'd like to talk to his parents still." "Okay." Jesse got out of the car and we walked into the house. "Do you have their number?" as I shut the door. "No," he said. I started to ask him how I was supposed to call them, as if I didn't have their number, but someone knocked on the door. I was still standing right next to it. I opened that door, and standing on my front step was that pale little boy with the blue eyes and a mop of white blonde hair that I'd almost run over on Wednesday. A little girl stood next to him with the same complexion. "Yes," I asked. "Hi, Driz," the little boy said. Is Jesse home?" The little boy standing on my front porch should not have known that name. It was my nickname from college, created on drunken night amongst my girlfriends, shortened from Drizzy. "No," I said. "That's fine," said the little girl. "My name is Devin, and you already know my brother's name." "Stan," I said. The little girl covered her mouth and giggled. Then Stan smiled and shrugged. "It's really quite simple. Rule 1, don't walk past mirrors in the dark. Rule 2, don't leave any doors open when you go to bed tonight. And ask your son what Rule 3 is, and remember, Greek means you're falling behind. A rustle means you've almost lost. When the lights go down, hopefully you won't see the dark shadows standing in the room of the corner. And hopefully you won't hear it breathing as your eyes shut and you begin to drift off to sleep. And if you hear a bang, well, hopefully you never hear a bang." Stan turned and walked away with his sister. I stared after them both and shook my head. I wouldn't play their stupid game. I walked into the house and found Jesse sitting at the table crying. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I heard a bang," he whispered. My mouth went dry. "When does the game end?" I asked. "It doesn't," he whispered. "It never ends." My heart started beating faster. "What's the third rule, Jesse?" His face fell and he sucked in a deep breath. "Rule 3. Knowing all 3 rules makes you a player." My stomach dropped. What if you lose? When it's dark, you'll hear them coming, like to let you know when they're getting close. "Who?" "Stan and Devin," Jesse said. "They'll reach out through the mirrors or open doorways and drag you through." "How do you win?" "If you win, you tell more people the rules to the soul game than the person that told you. Like I said, nosleep, I'm so sorry. But thanks for helping. Really. I'm going to enjoy my newfound freedom and hope that you enjoy your night. Give Stan and Devin my best." Sandwiches. I think my girlfriend is trying to kill me. Let me back up a little bit. feels as if they're getting any individual attention like they deserve. So you can understand how stunning Rachel must have been to catch my eye from way across the room out of all of those people. She's stunning. That's a good word to describe her because she was that and more. Seeing her was a breath of fresh air after the year-long ordeal with that was Jessica. I was still feeling a little sick over my ex, but once I saw Rachel, my heartache took a back seat. The fluttering of butterflies in my stomach. It might have only been something I ate for lunch that day, but I don't think so. I had to introduce myself to Rachel. I had to meet her. It took me several days to get the courage to talk to her, though. Once I did, everything went smooth. I picked her up for our first date 2 nights later. We went out, had drinks, and she moved in. Kind of fast, right? Yeah, I thought so too, but she was hot, so I didn't dig any deeper. Story of my entire life. Our relationship started off rocky. We broke up so many times over the course of those first 5 months that it feels like there wasn't a single day that passed without Rachel telling me how much she hated my guts. I knew it was an abusive relationship, but she never left, and she never cheated. That's the important thing. No matter what was going on in our relationship, she was always there. She was always present. Now I think she's trying to kill me. We quit fighting about a month ago, but I can still see that old hate flare up at times. I'll ask her about her day, and instead of answering me, she just gives me that look, that hateful look. I can see the hatred burning in her eyes, and to be honest, it hurts. I'd rather things go back to the way they were. I'd rather her tell me how much she hates me, how much she wants to leave me. Anything would be better than this silent treatment. We had lunch in the afternoon every day, and when we did, Rachel doesn't even eat anymore. She just stares at me. I'll offer her a sandwich, but she won't say anything. Actually, this is how I think she's killing me. The lunch meat. It's poison. Rachel is doing it on purpose. She knows that I love sandwiches. I think she also knows that I used to eat sandwiches with Jessica. I love Rachel with all my heart. I really do. But Jessica, yeah, well, she kept better. Thanksgiving leftovers. I hate Thanksgiving leftovers. Every year it's the same thing. Every single year. My wife and I eat Thanksgiving dinner together at our place. The next day we go to Robin's for Thanksgiving leftovers. Robin had a really good reason not to accept me, but not good enough just isn't good enough for me. I'd rather hate my hair or the way I dress. Like I said, anything would be better than not good enough. Every year I find myself looking across the table into my mother-in-law's glaring eyes. That look of disdain plain on her face. When I put my hand over Teresa's, sometimes I see Robin's lip curl back in disgust. It makes me want to do what anyone else would and reach across the table to smack that stupid look off her face. Yesterday, after Teresa and I finished our Thanksgiving meal, I sat her down and we had a serious talk. I told her I wanted to bond with her mother. I told her that the stability of our marriage depended on it. Now, Teresa was loving and completely supportive. Today I drove over to Robin's and we talked for a really long time. I told Robin to level with me. I told her to tell me what I needed to do to get her approval. Well, she snared at me, looking down, and told me that she would never accept me. She told me that I was disgusting, and God thought I was disgusting as well. Oh, that hurt, and something right then and there broke inside of me. I realized that this woman would never accept us. I realized that Robin would never accept me. So I did what anyone else would do. I punched her in the face. She went down hard and her eyes rolled up into the back of her head. I guess I cold-cocked her. I'd never hit anyone in my life before. The pain in my hand actually surprised me. It really stung, but I sighed and did what anyone else would do. I pulled the back of razor blades out of my bra and the ball peen hammer out from the waist of my skirt. Then I did what anyone else would do. I slipped a razor between each of her teeth and hammered them into the gums. I'm still not sure what I'm going to tell my wife. All I know is I absolutely hate Thanksgiving leftovers. Oof. That's a tough one. My holiday crush. I have two things going for me in life. This stupid kid. Now I'm just gonna warn you, this is animal abuse. This is pretty hard to listen to. But it does correlate with the story. After I'm gonna read this, so if you don't, I'll let you know when it's coming up. I have two things going for me in my life. This stupid kitten that's purring by my ankles and my feet. See, my feet are feminine. As a guy, it's kind of embarrassing. Paint my toes, slip on a pair of stilettos, and from the knees down, I'm a perfect woman. Seriously, if you had a police lineup, but could only see the knees down, you'd pick my calves and feet as the cutest every time. It's a gift and a curse. I can't get a girlfriend, but my lower fourth can get any guy I want. Boo-hoo, right? Right. Anyway, Simon brought the kitten over along with his gear. He thinks she's got potential star quality. Whatever. He thought the kitten that he brought last As usual, once Simon got the camera rolling, I strapped on my stilettos and played with Firefly. I made her run this way and that with this little wand I have that has bright feathers on the end. She would bounce for the feathers every time. Then Simon turned on the music. It's the same sick song every month. When Simon hits play, that means it's showtime. I drop the wand and walk over to Firefly, rolling her onto her back with my toe. I rub her belly with my foot. Alright, if you want to move forward about 30 seconds, do so now. Firefly suckled the toe of my stiletto using her claws to hold it in place. I smiled down at her. She was a cutie. But I slowly shifted my weight to the stiletto that had Firefly pinned to the tile. She quit suckling the toe of my stiletto and instead started hissing, trying to get out from underfoot. I smiled down and shushed her as I put more and more weight on her little body. And I'm sure you can figure out what happened. I don't even know if I can read this. It was horrible and adorable at the same time. She almost got out from under my foot, so I had to press down with all my weight. She collapsed immediately. Firefly screamed as my stiletto clicked against the tile. Can you imagine how stepping on a frozen, empty bird's nest feels? Now you know what crushing a kitten feels like. A pool of blood, it's always darker than you expect. It formed beneath Firefly's hips. Small trickles leaked from both corners of her open mouth. She seemed to be having trouble breathing. I waited until I saw the life leave her eyes before I lifted my foot and kicked her off. Simon paid me and I headed home, sick. The kitten purring at my ankles right now is named Christmas. At least that's what Simon said her name was. He probably named her that in the spirit of the holiday. Christmas. Simon's a sick bastard. Anyways, y'all have a nice night. I'm going to play with Christmas. Simon turned on the music. Same song every month. Showtime. That one's hard to read, but I want you to remember the name. That's important. And the name of Christmas, the cat. The cat that was still alive. K5. I don't get paid enough, so going to the doctor is always an act filled with fear and apprehension. This morning I took Matthew to the doctor. Come in, the doctor said. He's a large man, and when he bent down, the cracking of his knees echoed down the empty hallway. The doctor plastered on a huge smile and spoke to Matthew. What's your name, kiddo? Matthew told him. Matthew, huh? Well, that's a pretty grown-up name. The doctor ruffled Matthew's hair and stood up. I just wanted to leave to be done with the whole thing. Can we get this moving? I asked, kind of in a hurry here. The doctor's smile widened in that fake way you always see in the mall on an embarrassed mother trying to convince their little brats to act like human beings. Take a deep breath and relax, the doctor said. Let me check him out first. Follow me. Matthew and I followed the doctor into one of the exam rooms. ever seen before. Let's get you up on this table, the doctor said to Matthew, bending down to pick him up and sit him on the same stark white, crinkly paper that covers every exam table. There you are. You're a heavy, growing boy, aren't you? Now, how old are you, Matthew? I'm gonna guess you're 30. Matthew giggled and shook his head no. The doctor's bushy eyebrows came together and he slipped on the look of a man thinking hard. You wouldn't happen to be 40, would you? No, Matthew giggled, having a blast. Even I found the corners of my lips curling up despite myself. Well, Matthew, I give up. Just how old are you? The doctor asked. Matthew held up all the fingers on his left hand and held up the peace sign with his right. The doctor mouthed the word 7. Matthew giggled and shook his head forward and back in only the way a 7-year-old could. Any older and the kid would be giving himself whiplash. Is 7 too old to believe in magic? The doctor asked. No, Matthew almost shouted. I want to be Harry Potter when I grow up. The doctor chuckled. Harry Potter, huh? The doctor looked left and then right like he was checking the exam room for any eavesdroppers. He dropped his voice to barely above a whisper. Say, did I tell you that I know some magic? Matthew's eyes turned into dinner plates and his jaw dropped. It's true, the doctor said. I can even teach you to fly. Really? Matthew whispered. Really? If you behave, I'll let you use my magic hanky to fly. Matthew nodded and sat very still. Good, the doctor said. Now I'm going to use my magic ears to listen to your heartbeat. It'll be cold, but don't hurt. Sound good? Matthew nodded. That's great, here we go. The doctor said as he slipped the stethoscope beneath Matthew's shirt with ease that comes from doing something hundreds of times a year. Now breathe in really deep and hold it for me. Matthew breathed deep. Good. Now let it out. Matthew blew out all the air really hard, trying to do exactly what the doctor wanted. Deep breath in. Let it out. You're doing a great job, kiddo. The doctor hung the stethoscope around his neck, walked over to a desk with glass jars containing cotton swabs, gauze, and a tongue depressor. He lifted the lid on the tongue depressor and pulled one out. Only 2 more tests, and then I'll make you fly. Matthew nodded his brow, furrowing what I could only imagine to be supreme concentration on behaving. Open wide and say, ah, the doctor said. Matthew did, and the doctor held down his tongue with the depressor to get a good look. Perfect, the doctor said. After the extractions, everything will be tip-top, okay? Last test. I need you to turn around, drop your pants and your underwear to your ankles, and bend over. Matthew frowned at this. I'm a doctor. You can trust me, can't you? My mother always taught me to trust doctors, firemen, and police officers. Matthew's gaze looked over to me. It's all right, sweetie, I told him, my words. The fingertips on Matthew's back as he teetered on the edge. Matthew frowned for a few more seconds and then his face relaxed. Okay, he said. Matthew did as he was said, "Now spread your cheeks." Then I heard what I hear every other time I come to this place, the sound of deep breath taken in through the nose, the sound of a wine taster sniffing a delicate bouquet, the sound of Scotch lover breathing in a rich aroma. "Marvelous," the doctor whispered, "simply marvelous. Go ahead, pull your pants up, Matthew, all done." I heard the clothing rustle and looked up to see the same glazed look in the doctor's eyes that always comes after descending. "Are you going to teach me to fly now?" Matthew asked. "Oh, yes," the doctor said, drawing each word out to its fullest. He reached into his front pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. Then he pulled a bottle from his other pocket. He held the bottle to his ear and shook it for effect. "Just enough flying potion left over. Are you ready?" Eyes wide, Matthew bit his lower lip and nodded. The doctor uncapped the bottle and a sickly sweet smell filled the room. He held the handkerchief to the bottle and shook with the same practiced ease. "Okay, my magic handkerchief is ready to go. All you have." "Can you take a picture for my mom?" Matthew interrupted. "Of course we will. Don't you worry. I need you to listen. If you do this wrong, it won't work." "Okay," Matthew said. "Good. You remember when we were breathing deep for my magic ears earlier?" Matthew nodded. "Wonderful. You're going to do the same thing, except you're going to breathe in all your air out. Then you're going to hold my magic handkerchief tight to your mouth and nose like a doctor's mask. Once it's there, you'll breathe in as deep as you can, okay? The deeper the breath you take, the longer you fly, got it?" Matthew nodded in that 7-year-old way. This made me sad. "Okay, now breathe all your breath out. Blow it out in a huge gust, like a dragon breathing fire." Matthew did as he was told. This made me feel worse. "Good," the doctor said. "Now take the magic handkerchief and press it to your mouth and nose as hard as you can. Breathe deep. Go, 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 go." Matthew snatched the handkerchief from the doctor's hands and pressed it hard to his face, and he breathed in as deep as he could. His eyes started rolling back into the back of his head almost as soon as he started breathing in. "Catch him," the doctor said. "He's falling to the right." I sprang up and caught Matthew before he tipped off the edge of the table. "Isn't there an easier way?" "Sure," the doctor said with a shrug. "There are much easier ways, but I like it better when they do it to themselves. Besides, this way there are no screams." I laid Matthew down on the exam table, brushing back a few stray hairs from his tiny face. He looked so relaxed, lying there, so peaceful. "What are you going to do with him?" I asked. "Why the hell do you care?" the doctor asked. "The $2,000, it's in your pocket now. Get the hell out of here." I did just that. Got on the bus that would drop me off near the lot where I parked my car. After a few moments of crushing guilt in that bus seat, I did what I always do and scrawled my confession on the corner of the foggy window I was sitting next to. 2 words, neither bigger than a grain of rice, written with the corner of my fingernail. I stared at the 2 words for a long time. In my heart, the 2 words were what I knew Matthew would become. The bus stopped and I looked up. A familiar face always want to do. He smiled when he saw my face. Crap. I looked back to the 2 words, the answer to the question I'd asked the doctor. My confession, I stared at it, letting the weight lift from my shoulders, letting the scab tear away from my soul. I wiped the 2 words, human flashlight, away with my sleeve as the young man stood beside my seat. Mrs. Williams, the man asked. I smiled back. Your ex-students always want you to recognize them, yes. It's me, the man said. James William Brandt. You were my teacher in kindergarten, remember? I nodded and smiled. Of course I do, James. Now, take a seat. He did, and droned on with his dull life as I let my mind wander. Teachers didn't get paid enough, but we make ends meet any way we know how. I wondered what James would do if he ever found out that I sold his best friend to the doctor back when they were in first grade. James' best friend was one of my first sales. It's funny, every parent teaches their children to say no to rides from strangers. But if I taught you in kindergarten, I'm not a stranger when you're in first grade. Well, just ask Matthew. That was, the weird thing about these is that they're really disturbing, but this happens. That's, I think, what's most disturbing about this. Like, there was a dentist in South Florida when I was 13, 14. That was actually while his patients were under anesthesia injecting him with his HIV-infested blood. Isn't that sick? I mean, from ages, I think his youngest victim was 6 or 7, to an older person. I just think it was like 10 people. It was just unbelievable. But when I read these stories, that's what it reminds me of. But at least this isn't real life. I guess that makes it better for me. Moving on. The perfect one. Janny was immature, so I left her. Jessica disappeared on me after being miserable for an entire year. And just last month, Rachel tried to kill me. After I dumped Rachel, I picked up Kelly. She didn't work out either, so I dumped her too. After that breakup, I thought long and hard about what needed to happen next. I think I needed to reevaluate what I wanted and needed to happen. I needed to find someone or something that would make me happy. So last Saturday night, I went out. I wasn't really looking for love, but I found it. So here we are again. But this time I think I got it right. I think I found my happy ending. My slice of perfection. My new girlfriend's name is Marissa, and she's perfect. People always act like it's so hard to get a girlfriend. Guys, seriously, just look around. There's a ton of potential everywhere. Just look at me. Finding a girlfriend is simple. I scored the perfect one this time. My ex, Kelly, was such a mess. She couldn't go a day without falling apart of the tiniest thing. Do you all know how annoying that is? To come home and find your girlfriend in pieces for absolutely nothing. It's miserable. And I dumped her because she couldn't keep her crap together. Definitely not the type of girl you want to put a ring on. But my new girlfriend. She completes me. Yeah, I know it's corny, and it's really too soon to say that. I'm all too aware, trust me. Marissa completes me, though. She's perfect. She's gorgeous, and she's mine. You know those wavy girls in the magazines and runways that real women always complain about? That's Marissa to a T. A real woman may have curves, but I'm not attracted to that. I like seeing my girlfriend's hip bones. For me, hip bones are sexy. Also, I could care less about big breasts. Marissa's are tiny. Almost not even there. Boobs just get in the way. And Marissa's smile, wow. Her smile is radiant and constant. It fills me with the hope that things are getting better. Did I mention the intimacy? Yeah, it's amazing because she's so thin she never gets her period. We're always on each other 24/7. It's awesome. The only bad thing is the cold feet. I guess that's not really all that bad though. Most women have cold feet. I feel like I'm finally on the cusp of true happiness. Janny was a mistake and Rachel was a bad decision. I like to think I'm moving forward with my life. Marissa and I are in for the long haul. I finally have hope in everything I ever dreamed of. Well, almost everything. Last night, Marissa and I sat down and had a long talk. I think we're ready for kids. I know what you're gonna say. You think you're ready for kids after 1 week. The answer is most assuredly yes. And I'm going to get right on that once I find my shovel. It's all that's keeping me from my happy ending. I think the last place I used it was at the cemetery. Last Saturday night, if I'm not mistaken. Alright, now I'm going to read the story. Those were like short stories that stood alone, that is going to put the main series together. Alright, here we go. I've changed my microphones again. These are my Sennheiser MK4s. So continuing with U/Bloodworth saga. The calm before the storm. Now this is the series, so a prelude. Once you start, you cannot stop. You don't stop. I told you that was my therapist. That is what my therapist told me. Were you paying attention? Write it all out, he said. Write everything out to cope. If you have to fill in the blanks, make it flowing. A flowing narrative. Inhabit the bodies of those who you've taken from. See what they saw, feel what they felt. Then you'll have an idea of how everything fits together. A few pieces will always be missing, but you'll finally be able to rest. I wrote everything out from their point of view. Some of you were confused and didn't understand. That's okay, because it's my turn. It's my turn. It's time to line the dots up. Time to tip that first domino. 6 years in elementary school is the final piece to this puzzle. At the end of this series, you won't be a Kickstarter. There won't be any begging. This isn't a money grab, and there's no gold at the end of this rainbow. My story will shine in this one place for a brief period of time, and then it will sink below all the new incoming life as it begins to rot, just as it should. Another body added to the pile. My name is Christopher Bloodworth, and this is my story. Let's get this over with. I have a twin sister. Her name is Abby. Fraternal, not identical. Obviously, Abby and I met Jonah the first day of kindergarten. In a class full of squirming little 6-year-olds, he stuck out in the way only a kid that young could. Jonah was quiet. He was still. Our teacher, Mrs. Williams, sat us in alphabetical order. Abby sat to my left, and Jonah sat to my right. I liked Jonah. I liked that he was calm when so many of the others in our class ran around screaming. The three of us became friends over the following weeks. Jonah spent a lot of time at our house. We played Banjo-Koozie and Mario Kart 64. Abby fit right in with Jonah and me because she was a tomboy. One Friday night when Jonah wasn't over, Abby and I realized that we'd never seen where Jonah lived. We had no idea what his house looked like, but we roughly knew about where it was. Jonah had mentioned the street he lived on before and had drawn his house in class. So Abby and I thought we could find it easy enough. We got permission from our parents and headed out. He only lived 4 blocks away, and we lived in a gated community, so we never really worried about danger. We set out the next morning, and at that age, everything is an adventure. We thought of ourselves as treasure hunters. When we got to a street, Abby and I pretended to be the detective versions of Pip and Pop from Bear in the Big Blue House. It can't be that house, Abby said. Jonah would have mentioned the columns in front. I nodded. It can't be that one either, because it has a gravel sidewalk, and Jonah always talks about jumping his bike off the paved walkway that went from his front door to the mailbox. Abby pointed to the front yard. Now doesn't that look like his bike? Yeah. Let's go see if that's his house. Abby and I walked up to his front door. We were so excited we'd both solved a mystery and found a hidden treasure. It was a pretty big moment in our young lives. Abby rang the doorbell. Who is it? A shrill woman's voice screamed from inside. Abby and I looked at each other. I saw the fear in her face and was sure that she saw the same on mine. Should we leave? Abby began, but the door whipped open. I can still remember with clarity the way wind sucked into that house, rustling my hair. It was like the house was smelling me. A woman with a shriveled face and a frown was frozen in place and staring at the woman in the doorway. Something about her face seemed off. Something was wrong with it. "Hi, ma'am," Abby said. "We're sorry to bother you. We were wondering if Jonah could come out and play." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Jonah." She spat the word out like it tasted foul. "What do you want with Jonah?" Abby got a look of confusion on her face, and I didn't blame her. I was confused as well. See, our parents taught us to be polite. When we asked other parents if their kids could come out and play, Abby said the exact words that we were taught to use. The woman's reaction was more than our brains could process. "We wanted to know if he could come out and play," Abby said. The woman laughed through her nose, and something strange happened. The middle of her face shifted. My mouth fell open. The woman looked at me and laughed through her nose again. Once again, the middle of her face moved. It was only a little, but enough to be noticeable. She turned and screamed into the house. "Jonah, you got a queer and a slut out here to see ya." The woman didn't bother to look back at us. She walked off into the house, leaving the front door wide open and us standing there on the porch. Abby and I looked at each other, completely dumbfounded. We turned back when the woman screamed at us from within the depths of the dark house. "Get in here and close that door. You're letting out all my good AC." Abby and I jumped at the same time and scampered into the house. Abby shut the door behind us, eyes wide. We both looked around. The darkness was heavy. It weighed down on us, as did the stench of cigarette smoke. All the blinds covering the windows were closed. No light shone in. "What do we do?" Abby asked. "I don't know," I said, looking around, trying to see anything in the darkness. That is when I heard it, a slow intake of breath from behind us, the sound of someone breathing in through a clogged nasal cavity. "Hello?" I asked, not turning around. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. "Do you hear that?" Abby whispered. "Hear what?" "Breathing." "No," I said, lying more to myself than to my sister. "Maybe we should leave." "Should we?" Abby asked. I felt her hand slip into my own, and she answered her own question. "Yeah, let's go." "Wait," Jonah's voice said from somewhere to our right. I jumped at his voice, and I'm sure Abby did too, because she squeezed my hand half to death. Light flared to our right. It shone in the darkness and illuminated the foyer. Its sudden brightness also blinded me. I squinched my eyes shut and then cracked them open a little to look around. There was a large mirror mounted to the wall in front of us. Yellowing wallpaper curled on either side of the mirror. "Hey, Jonah," I said, looking in the direction direction of the light. Abby squeezed my hand again. Look. I looked at her and she nodded, her chin towards the mirror. I looked at the mirror and saw that Jonah's mom now stood directly behind us. She stood completely still and watched. She didn't say a word, but kept making that wheezing sound. "Come on, guys," Jonah said. He angled the light down to the ground. Several roaches scurried away. I could have sworn I saw the leathery blur of a rat's tail slip off. But I'm sure that was my imagination. We turned to follow the light, but I had to look back at the mirror. I wished I'd never done that. Jonah's mother was staring right into my eyes and smiling. Her eyes were wide, and cracks that almost looked like gills flared open on either side of her nose. It was almost like she opened 2 extra mouths on her face. Abby jerked my hand and we followed Jonah. We walked through a room filled with piles of magazines and newspapers, and then we were at Jonah's room. All I could make out in his room was a beanbag chair, a closet door, and a mattress that sat on the ground, strewn with sheets. Can we turn on a light?" Abby asked. "Can we turn on a light?" Jonah's mom screamed from behind us. Cold, bony fingertips clamped down on my shoulders. "Shine the light over here, son." Jonah flicked the light from the ceiling to his mother's face. I still thought that there was something wrong with her face. Something that I couldn't quite make out. Her nose and surrounding skin looked fake. "You come here to sneer at me and mine, boy?" Jonah's mom asked. The smell of cigarettes and something like molding fruit puffed from her mouth. There was a darker smell beneath it, though, a base note of rot and infection. "No, ma'am," I said, shaking my head side to side to emphasize the point. "Judge not, lest he be judged." Hell, I don't even know where that came from or what made me say it, but that's what slipped out of my panicked mouth. As soon as it was out, I knew I'd made a mistake. Jonah's mom had snapped back like I'd spat in her face. "Let me teach you something about the cloth," she said. I noticed that she was missing 4 of her upper teeth, and then I saw how much I had not noticed. Holding my shoulder with one hand, Jonah's mother reached up with the other and pinched her nose. Shut like a little kid would do in reaction to a bad smell. Only she didn't stop there. She brought the fingers, pinching her nose away from her skull, and a huge chunk from the middle of her face lifted from the rest. She dropped the hand holding the prosthetic to her side, and I stared into the black abyss. The smell of rot intensified when she let out a sigh of relaxation. The hole in the middle of her face looked like one of those tall, narrow caves you see in the side of the cliff. It split her upper lip in half and extended upwards from there, branching out a little on either cheek and above her brow. The tissue on the inside reflected back light. It was wet, and there were little flecks of black speckled across the gleaming tissues of exposed sinus. "This," she said, This is what happens when you trust in the cloth. The cloth screws you. I didn't know what to do, so I stood there trying not to gag as tears rolled down my cheeks. You see this hole? She tapped the prosthetic against her left cheek, where her nose should have been, were 2 holes. The left one much larger than the right. Yeah, he screwed me right in the nose after he cut it off, she said. After that, I was cleansed. She nodded like I agreed with her. I hadn't moved since she'd grabbed me. You ever look down on me or ever tell anyone about this, I'll do this to your face. And after that, I'll shove my hand as over up your ass and make you talk like a ventriloquist dummy. You got that? I nodded. I didn't know what this all was, but I understood that she would hurt me if I ever told. Good, she said, letting me go and turning away into the darkness. I fell to the ground and cried. Abby came over and gave me a hug. Jonah just sat on his bed. I hugged my sister, and from the corner of my eye, I saw the beanbag chair in the corner of Jonah's room surge with life and roll over. Jonah looked at me and sighed. Oh, Mom puts my dog in there when I'm bad. That day at Jonah's house changed me. Now you know why I have problems with mirrors. Every time I look into a mirror, I knew I'd see her just over my shoulder, face cracked open in a huge grin. Every time I heard the sound of the wind blowing in the night, or a heater kicking on in a dark bedroom, what I really heard was Jonah's mother breathing through the abyss in her face next to me. Abby and I were only in that room one other time before the police found her body. Five friends and my twin sister, the coin and the pencil box. That's what was taken from me. I lost 6 people who I was closest to. Abby was my twin sister. Austin, Maggie, Jonah, Zena, and Ivan. It still hurts to say their names out loud, even today. You'd think that amount of guilt I carry over their deaths would have hardened me, make me strong as a diamond. It doesn't. Every day I feel the cracks widen a bit more. I feel myself dip lower to the ground. No one ever tells you this, but guilt presses every day. Maybe talking about what happened would help me. Maybe talking about what happened would heal me, but I doubt it. Let's find out what happened. We all met in Mrs. Williams' kindergarten class. Mrs. Williams was the nicest woman I'd ever met. She always had time for the most ridiculous questions any of her students could ask. But something was just off with her. I couldn't put my finger on it. I think it was her eyes that gave her away. Even though she would smile wide for all of us, you could see a sadness in her eyes. Everything started with Miss Williams' class. I think if she'd put me in a different group asked us all a question. Each group was supposed to go around their circle and answer it. Mrs. Williams picked Abby to start our group off with each question. I remember that day because it was Abby's birthday. She was wearing the bright green ribbon I'd given her that morning. She was also wearing the sparkly red plastic ring Zena gave her when we were waiting in the cafeteria to be led to our classroom. "Everybody ready?" Miss Williams asked. Some said yes, and some just nodded. "Well, okay," Miss Williams said. "First question. Who is your best friend?" As the other groups around us began to answer the question, Abby looked across the circle at me and smiled. "Well, my best friend is my brother." Austin was next. He had a birthmark that covered the lobe of his left ear. "My best friend is my dog, Jake." Everyone giggled. At that age, saying your dog was your best friend was the pinnacle of comedy. "My best friend is Zena," Maggie said. "My best friend is Maggie," Zena said. "My best friend is Jesus," Ivan said. We all giggled again. "And my best friend is Abby," I said. Jonah stared at the empty carpet in the center of the circle for a while before answering. "I don't have a best friend." No one laughed. We didn't know how to respond to this. The rest of the class seemed to be having a great time, but our circle went dead quiet. "Everything okay over there?" Miss Williams asked when she stopped by our circle. "Jonah doesn't have a best friend," Maggie said. Mrs. Williams frowned for a second and then smiled wide. She looked like a wind-up toy that the spring had wound down and then wound back up real tight. Miss Williams gave us her biggest smile. "Oh, Jonah, you can be my best friend." Jonah hadn't broken eye contact with the empty patch of carpet the whole time. He shrugged. Miss Williams' words off like a jacket. "It's all right," Jonah said. "I'm not very good anyway." "Sure you are," she said, nodding as she smiled and wound back up. "You're a wonderful boy." Jonah just shrugged. Abby was the first one to stand up. She walked over to Jonah and sat down beside him, putting her arm around his shoulder. She said, "I'll be your best friend." Abby was the kindest person I'd ever known. Even for a kid, she was big-hearted. Jonah broke eye contact with the empty patch of carpet. He seemed to see us for the first time. Austin got up next. "My dog has smelly breath anyways," he said. "I will be your best friend too." "Me too," Zena said, sliding closer. "Yeah, I'll be your best friend too," Maggie said. Oh, Ivan looked around the group and shrugged. "I guess me too." We all stared back at him. Ivan was kind of strange. He shrugged again before moving closer to Jonah. As I'm writing this, I've just realized something. I was the last one. Then. It's funny in a sad sort of way. I slid over and said, "Jonah, I'll be your best friend." That one moment bonded us together for the rest of our lives, and it all started with my sister Abby. Jonah looked around the circle that had originally sounded that empty patch of carpet now surrounded him. Thanksgiving break was when it happened. It was a Saturday, and Jonah, Abby, and I were playing in Jonah's backyard. Jonah's mom and Jonah's house were scary, but his backyard was awesome. No one ever mowed or trimmed back there, so everything was overgrown and wild. To kids our age that were raised in the suburbs, it was like being lost in this amazing jungle. We spent our time there searching for exotic species of worms, cataloging new species of rare endangered birds, and discovering new worlds hidden behind every bush. All that changed when we found the coin. Earlier that morning, the three of us watched a TV show on the Discovery Channel about gold prospecting. This was so exciting because it gave us a formula for treasure. Get some mesh, some water, and you could find gold. When the show ended, Abby, Jonah, and I looked at each other with wonder. Ask her, Abby said. I nodded and walked into the kitchen. Mom was leaning against the counter talking on the phone with Mrs. Travers. Mom called her Meredith. But Abby and I weren't supposed to call grown-ups by their first name. Razor blades, my mom asked Miss Travers. She held up her finger for me to wait, so I stood there patiently, trying to stand as still as I could, with all that gold in the ground calling up to me. My mom listened intently to Miss Travers for a few seconds. She always seemed so nice, though, Mom said, and her wife was so adorable. Do they know why? As my mom listened to Miss Travers' reply, I started running in place. I don't actually know why. It just seemed like I had to move or else I would go crazy with excitement. I did what anyone else would do. That's all she was saying when they found her. That's absolutely bizarre. I wonder what that Meredith, you can hold on a moment. I'll be right back. Mom held the phone to her shoulder and looked down at me. Yes, we were watching a show on gold, I said, the words spilling out of my mouth so fast. Can we use this strainer to get some gold? My mom stared at me as if I'd lost my ever-loving mind. It's for gold, I said, hopping up and down. No, sir, she said. Go ask your father if he has any sort of mesh or something. Dad gave us an old screen from a window to use, and we headed over to Jonah's. That's where we found the coin. Actually, we didn't find it. Abby did. She was the one prospecting for Mayan gold, while Jonah and I were hiding in a tree as lookouts for any bandits that may want to steal our treasure. Abby called us over when she found the bumpy black disc. She examined it for a second and tossed it away. She thought it was a rock. Not so fast. I picked it up and rubbed it against my shorts, and a big chunk of mud broke off. When I did this, under that chunk, you could just make out the profile of a face. It was only a silver dollar, but Jonah and I crowded over it like it was the last piece of gold on the planet. Abby kept asking if she could see it, but we wouldn't let her. I don't know why we wouldn't let her, but we wouldn't. She finally got fed up. I'm going home. I'm going to tell Mom, Abby said. Baby, I said back. I'm going to tell her that you said that too. Go on then, Tattletale. Abby put her hands on her hips. You're going to be in so much trouble when you get home. She turned around and stomped off. I remember looking over at Jonah and laughing. We're rich, I said. Jonah nodded as she left the backyard. That is the last living memory of Abby that I have. Me screaming that Joan and I were rich as she walked out of the backyard, crying. I never saw her again. Not alive, anyway. When I finally went home, that silver dollar warm in my pocket, my mom asked me where Abby was. I can still remember the way my stomach rolled over and my arms went numb. I told my mom that Abby had left Jonah's house an hour or two before. I can remember the look on my mom's face. Her eyes got huge and she went pale. She was quiet for a few seconds, then she started screaming, and I started crying. She was screaming for my father and breathing really fast. My father came into the kitchen and started yelling because he didn't know what was going on. I don't really remember much of the following days. All I remember is someone telling me that Abby had been taken because children don't just disappear like that. No one saw anything, so it had to be it. Other than that, though, it was all hazy parade of relatives, police officers and family friends, all of them looking down at me, all of them with the same look in their eye, the look that said, "You did this. You caused our Abby to disappear, to be taken from us. It's all your fault." I don't know how many times I prayed for God to take me instead. Everyone hated me and loved Abby. Take me, God, please. Please just take me instead. When I'm drunk and the pills are rolling heavy, I ask God why he took her and not me. He doesn't bother to answer now, and he never bothered to answer back then. When I went back to school, everyone stayed away from me like I had the plague. Everyone except the kids that were in our original circle. Yeah, they rallied around me and told me that they were my friends. Zena in particular. They told me that she would be my new sister if I'd let her. That made me sick to my stomach. I'd already lost one sister, and now Zena wanted to fill her place and make me whole again. The next day, my second day back to school, 1 month after my sister disappeared, everything changed again. The next day, my second day back at school, 1 month after my sister disappeared, everything changed once again. I found the note inside my desk. The letters were in the correct order, but each letter was written upside down and backwards. I left you a present in my desk. I'll be your best friend. I don't have the original, but this is what it looked like. The present was a pencil box found in Zena's desk. Here are the things it contained. One severed, rotting dog's tail, written in white. On the white fur in red Sharpie were the names: Maggie, Ivan, Austin, Jonah, and Christopher. The letters of each name were written upside down and backwards, but in the correct order. Number 2, was my sister's middle finger. It still had on the sparkly red plastic ring Zena had given her for her birthday. Abby's finger wasn't rotting, it was freshly removed. She's alive, I wanted to shout at them. This is great news. This is a great sign. She's alive. Abby's alive. My sister is alive. Abby was alive, all right. But that was the problem. Before her finger was severed, someone placed it into a mechanical pencil sharpener and ground her finger to the bone. Part 3. Captain Carlson and the Hope Diamond. Everything gets darker from here on out. But that should make most of you happy. Just thinking about what I'm going to type makes me sick to my stomach. But I'm just your marionette anyways. And I'll dance some more. Zena was tainted after the pencil box was found in her desk with her own hair inside. The police said Zena couldn't have had anything to do with my sister's disappearance. She was goalie for a soccer team, and plenty of people saw her allow 7 goals in a 7-3 loss on Saturday that my sister was taken. They said there were no fingerprints on the message in my desk or on anything in the box. But what the police said didn't matter to kindergartners. Our group shut Zena out. We shunned her, and that weekend, Zena disappeared. Her parents said that she had been watching TV, but decided she wanted to play in the backyard. Her mom said that was fine, so as long as she stayed in the backyard. Her mom sat by the window for a little bit, watching Zena sit alone in the grass. Zena's mother said that she just glanced away from the backyard for a moment to watch a trailer, her eyes wide shut on the TV. When she looked back through the window again, Zena was gone. The same thing, and no trace, no witnesses taken from her own backyard. No trace of Zena ever appeared until almost a year later, when first grade started. Everything seemed a little brighter, a bit more normal. People seemed to be moving on from the disappearance of Abby and Zena. But the darkness returned that December. One of our classmates, a kid named Matthew, disappeared on a random weekend, but it was later determined that his disappearance had not been related to Abby and Zena. But wait, you're probably saying, how did they know that Abby and Zena were taken by the same person? Because Zena's mom checked the mail on a normal day that December and found a triangular-shaped stone, rounded on the top side, mostly flat on the bottom, that was painted a light shade of blue. The stone was sitting on top of her mail. A brown smiley face was painted on the underside. Zena's mother thought it was a prank, just kids in the neighborhood messing around. But she found the stone cute and put it on her mantle. She thought it was the type of thing that Zena would have liked. She didn't find out what it was until we were all in 2nd grade. No matter how many times I think about this next part, I know that it couldn't have happened. swallowed my bite and ignored him. What's behind it? I asked Maggie. Maggie looked across the table at Austin and Ivan, her hazel eyes darting back and forth. Her hazel eyes darting back and forth. Then she looked back at me and whispered, "The Hope Diamond." "The Hope Diamond?" Austin asked through a mouthful of bees. "What the heck is that?" "Shh," Maggie hissed. "We can't let Captain Carlson know that we know. He'll kill us if he finds out it's the largest diamond in the world." Ivan laughed. "A teacher, kill us." Oh, there it is. That trust of a teacher. Maggie nodded with a solemn look on her face, and he'd enjoy it too. Pirates are mean. "What's she saying?" Joan asked me. I ignored him. "So how do we get it from behind the badge?" I asked Maggie. "It'll be a convict mission," Maggie said, squinting her eyes and nodded. Ivan giggled. "You mean covert?" "Yeah, well," Maggie rolled her eyes. "Whatever. This is what we do." Maggie told us her plan to capture the Hope Diamond. At the time, it sounded infallible, but like so many things, it could only end in absolute failure. Our school held a book club every day after school let out. It was held in the library. Sometimes it would be quiet reading. Sometimes a teacher would read to us. Captain Carlson was the head of the after-school book club. When he read, he sat in a large rocking chair. Maggie said I should be the one to do it because, in her own words, everyone feels sorry for you because of Abby. You'll be safe. I agreed to be spearheaded the mission. In the middle of the captain's story, I raised my hand. "Yes," the captain asked, his lisp drawing out that last S. "Can I use the bathroom?" I asked. "I don't know, can you?" he asked in return. I sighed. I always forgot. "May I use the bathroom?" I asked. "Yes, you may," the captain said. "Thank you," I mumbled as I got up from my spot and approached his chair. The bathroom was just past where the captain was set up for story time. As I walked past the captain, I accidentally, in quotes, tripped on my own feet. As I fell, I reached out for the captain's eye patch. Quit laughing. The plan was that I would grab the strap on my way down. The badge would come off and the Hope Diamond would tumble out into the hands of the person who was sitting right in front of the captain. I did not want to know at all. The memory of that cavern in the middle of Jonah's mother's face flared to life. All I wanted was for the captain to keep his eye covered. I shook my head emphatically no. Well, dump crap, the captain said. He held one hand against my chest, pinning me to the wall. With the other, he lifted the bench and leaned in close. He had no eye, whereas I should have been. There was only shiny, puffed up skin that looked like wet lips pressed out from the socket. Are you enjoying this? He asked. And I swear to God, I swear to this day, I swear to God, the shiny flesh in his eye socket moved. Yes, moved as he spoke. Like he had two mouths talking to me at the same time. I thought something then that's always stayed with me. What if his lisp was actually the mouth behind the patch trying to speak? That thought hit me, then the worst thing happened. I keep telling myself that it was only my imagination. My senses still tell me that it happened, though. It had to have been the glare of the fluorescent light on the moist flesh. It had to have been. The lips in his eye socket smiled, parting a little, and I swear I saw teeth. I'm not even, it is in my mind this day. The 3 rows of stark white teeth like lamprey. Captain Carlson let the patch pop back over his eye and escorted me back into the library. Everybody stared at me, but I didn't care. I sat quiet for the rest of story time. The kids surrounding me occasionally snuck a glance, but I stared at the book in the captain's hand. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still see that mouth in his eye socket opening up in a smile at me. Maggie tried to talk to me after we were dismissed, but I wouldn't say anything about what I saw. I didn't want to think about it. As we walked home, me pushing my bike next to her, she finally got fed up with asking me what happened. I'd prefer to walk by myself, Maggie said, bobbing her head side to side in that prissy way she did sometimes. I shrugged. I'd seen hell because of her, and I didn't understand why she was so angry with me. Besides, she hadn't seen the mouth like I had. I rode my bike home and that day terrified by what I'd seen. I walked into my house, shaken, thinking that Captain Carlson would be lurking around the corner. All those teeth at the ready. My mom was in the living room sitting next to a younger woman. When something huge tackled me, I started screaming, "Down, Ringu, down." The younger woman said. The dog on top of me got off and started to lick my face. "Ringu," the woman said. I could hear the smile in her voice. "Honey," my mom said, "this is Cecilia. She's a writer." I looked at Cecilia. "Nice to meet you," I said. "Nice to meet you," Cecilia said. "You've already met Ringu." The dog panted at my side. "What's going on?" I asked. "Oh, nothing, honey," my mom said. Her face was red and blotchy. "We have to go to a..." She paused. Darren looked like she was about to cry. It made me want to cry. "Well, we have to say goodbye to a friend," she finished. I didn't understand why she would cry about something said goodbye to friends every day. I didn't find out where my mom and dad went until a few years later. They went to a wake. Zena's body, frozen, had been found that morning in the middle of a soccer field. She was found in a sitting position, slumped forward, thawed out over a soccer ball. She was mostly intact. When the police told Zena's mother what was missing, she fainted. Zena's mom realized that the light blue stone sitting on her mantle was painted the color for a specific reason. She realized that it was painted teardrop and that it was actually not a stone. It was one of Zena's two missing kneecaps. The police took the kneecap and found that the brown smiley face on the back contained traces of Abby's DNA. Zena's kneecap, Abby's blood. Zena was dead, Abby was still alive. And Maggie, well, she never made it home after the book club. Part 4. Whipped cream and chocolate sprinkles. For all of you who just want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, here it is. Now let's get on with it. Have you been enjoying yourself so far? I hope this has been fun for you. Because it's been miserable for me. I'm tired of doing this, so the schedule is getting moved up. What do you care though? You're only reading about my life for your own sick enjoyment. The neighborhood went into a panic after Maggie disappeared. Parents started pulling their kids out of school. I know I would have. That's for sure. Families moved to other neighborhoods. Kids quit playing in the streets. I'm not sure what it was about my area. See, it wasn't just the children that were disappearing. My babysitter Cecilia was found in an abandoned building. She'd been R-worded and murdered there. When they searched Cecilia's apartment, they found a young man named Kevin, whom she'd brought home that night before. He was in the kitchen, R-worded, with his throat slashed open. Her dog, Ringo, was found next to Kevin's body. The dog had the same injuries. Nicholas had been busy in the time since he killed Janny. When he disappeared, everybody thought he fled. He hadn't, though. He moved into an old apartment building in the outskirts of downtown Austin and proceeded to kidnap several University of Texas co-eds. He worked for the apartment building as a super. When someone went over Nicholas' head and complained to management about a horrible smell, he abandoned ship. That was when they found what was left of the co-eds and multiple Tupperware containers in his fridge. Apparently, Nicholas bought a deli slicer and sliced the co-eds up for sandwiches. It's believed that when the thinly sliced flesh started to go bad, as meat does, he kept eating and grew ill. When all this came out, I vaguely remember there being rumors about the building Nicholas supervised had been haunted. I just think he was sick. People talked about hearing whispers through the wall. I also learned another word in 3rd grade. The horrible word for homosexual. I'm not gonna say it. Like so much of what happened, it all started at lunch. So when is your dad bringing you over? Ivan asked me as we filed into the school cafeteria. He was talking about a birthday sleepover at his house. It was supposed to be my first sleepover. What are you guys talking about? Joan asked. Nothing, Ivan said. It's a secret. I frowned. I didn't understand. Why did it need to be a secret? Ivan was my best friend, though. So I thought maybe he had a reason. A secret, Austin asked. Secrets are for girls. And are y'all girlfriend, or something? I giggled at that. The idea of Ivan and I being girlfriend was hilarious to my 3rd grade mind. Ivan and Jonah didn't laugh. Are you two homosexuals now? Jonah asked. Ivan and Austin and I stared at Jonah. Ivan looked around to find the teacher and then asked Jonah in a hushed voice, what the hell does that word mean? Jonah shook his head. I don't know. I think it's when 2 boys or 2 girls make a baby together. I'm sure that my face mirrored the looks of Austin and Ivan. 2 boys. Girls were gross enough, but the idea of 2 boys together was crazy. You just made that up, I said. Jonah shook his head. No. My mom says to watch out for them. They'll get you if you don't. Austin made a faux scary ooh noise. Everyone started laughing hard, but Jonah, he just shook his head. It's for your birthday, isn't it? Jonah asked Ivan when we sat down to eat. It's a sleepover, I said. Ivan put his head in his hands and groaned. Oh. Austin got up and sat down at a different table. Jonah just got this really sad look on his face. He looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. What? I asked. I could only have one person over, Ivan said. Okay, so I was confused. So I couldn't invite everyone, and I only invited you, Ivan said. Jonah's eyes get really shiny. He got up and joined Austin. I'd felt sick. I couldn't believe I'd just done that. Ivan just shrugged. Oh well, he said. Well, Mom even packed me a cupcake today. I grunted and looked down at my lunch. I wasn't even hungry anymore. Ivan didn't have that problem. bottom of the container, and Ivan laughed as he took a huge bite of the cupcake. I giggled at the size of the bite he'd taken. Almost half of the cupcake had been in his mouth. Some of the frosting hung down on his chin. It looked like it was floating there, hovering almost. Ivan got a strange look on his face and swallowed. He put the uneaten half of the cupcake down and reached for the frosting on his chin. I watched, mesmerized, as he pulled long strands of frosting away from his mouth. The frosting looked like it was hanging from something. Then I understood. Hair, and lots of it. Oh my god, gross, I said. Ivan nodded, staring at the blonde and black hair dotted with bits of frosting in his hand. I could see more sticking out from where he'd bitten into the cupcake. And it tastes funny too, Ivan said. Look. Ivan picked up the cupcake and turned it so I could see the side he'd bitten from. It had a soft center. I shrugged. It's just a cupcake with filling, I said. Whatever it is. Whatever it is. It's filled with is gross, Ivan said. Let me see. I reached over and picked up the cupcake. I grabbed Ivan's spoon and tried to take out a tiny bit of the filling. I was going to taste it, but the whole center came out in one piece. I rolled the center over and dropped the spoon. Ivan started gagging and vomiting on the cafeteria floor. A teacher came over to see what the problem was, and only got out a soft "oh" before she fainted and cracked her head on the tile. The pupil of the half-eaten eyeball stared up at me from the table. The iris was hazel, the same hazel that Maggie's eyes were. The police came. It was Maggie's eye, as was the blonde hair and the frosting. The only fingerprints on the container were Ivan's and my own. We found out later that the eye had been removed while Maggie was still alive. The smiley face on the bottom of the Tupperware was drawn on in Abby's blood. The black hair and the frosting was Abby's too. There was quite a bit of scalp still attached. Abby was still alive. The sleepover was canceled. Ivan was never the same after he found out that the eyeball was Maggie's. About a month later, something during the night, Ivan snuck into his parents' room. He went back to his own room and using a red crayon, he drew a picture of a snowflake. Ivan taped this to his wall. Around midnight, his parents were ripped from sleep by the sound of a single gunshot. Ivan lived for another 15 minutes after he pulled the trigger, gasping and crying through the ruin, his ruined face as his parents held him. And then everything went quiet. Maggie's thawing body was found the next day in the woods. Her face was swarming with ants and flies. Both her eyes had been removed. The empty eye sockets were filled with whipped cream and chocolate sprinkles. Tree stars and tinsel. grade year, it started to gag again. At recess, one day a kid in my grade found a sack. He had a strange name. Let me see. Balthazar, but we called him Bal. Bal was a weird little kid that was quiet all the time and kept to himself. I've heard that some horrible things happened to him later in high school, but that's another story for another time. Bal was at the corner of the playground watching the teachers. I was swinging watching him. All the teachers were talking to each other, not really paying attention to Bal. My mouth fell open when he hopped the little chain fence out where he was. I knew that playing hooky was from watching television, but I never thought it actually happened in real life. But here's the thing, Bal didn't leave, though. He walked 2 steps, picked up a sack. It looked like it was made from heavy burlap or canvas. He walked back to the fence and threw it over, then hopped over himself. Looking over to the teachers to make sure no one had missed him, Bal smiled. He didn't know that I was watching him. He crouched down. He opened the sack. He stayed in that position for what seemed like a long time. When he stood up, he dumped the contents out on the grass and started arranging. I stopped swinging and walked over to him. He nodded when I got there and kept working. Austin walked up beside me. Jonah joined him. Then more started coming to watch. Someone behind me started crying, but I didn't turn, and no one tried to comfort the kid. We all stood there, eyes wide and mouths open. As Bal pieced together the remains of a decomposing corpse on the grass of the playground, one of the teachers came over to see what was going on and screamed at Bal, telling him to quit touching the 2 white bones and gray flesh. He ignored her and kept placing the pieces where they belonged, calm as if all he was doing is putting together a human puzzle. I can remember the teacher walking towards Bal to stop him. I remember Bal looking up at her with his little fists clenched into a tight ball. He said a single word. No. The next thing I remember is the corpse being fully pieced together on the grass and the teacher escorting Bal to the office. No one ever saw Bal again. He moved solo, the body in the sack. About another month earlier in South Austin, the grave of a recently deceased woman named Kelly was robbed. The clothes and jewelry were left in the casket, but the body was not. Kelly's corpse was what Bal pieced together on the grass on the playground. The police came out to the school, and male liquid was discovered inside the corpse's rotting privates. The semen belonged to the one and only Nicholas Troy. Over the days that followed, more graves were disturbed, the graves of women and several children. The names of those children are as follows: Ivan, Maggie, and Zena. All were removed from their caskets, their clothing and jewelry left behind. The bodies still have not been recovered. There was speculation that Nicholas Troy was the one who'd originally kidnapped and killed each of my friends. But that was proven false at the end of my 5th grade year. But don't worry, we'll get to that soon, I promise. First, I need to tell you about my mother's death. It's a hard thing to think about, much less type out. But my insists that it's part of the healing process. I'm not really buying that anymore. I'm not sure that you can heal from the things I've been through, but I'll keep playing along. My mother left my father and me about a month into 4th grade. She moved across town into an apartment building. I still don't know why she left us. The whole thing was so bizarre. She went back to her maiden name, but also changed her first name. She went by the name of Jessica. That scared me because one of the women found in Nicholas's fridge had been named Jessica. I didn't want my mother to end up like that. If I'm completely honest with myself, I have to say that she left and changed her name because of me. I believe my mother was scared of me. My friends were dying one by one, and I think that she believed she was next. It's funny, had she stayed with us, she would have lived. I went to visit her at the apartment once, and I just remember how sad she looked. Her eyes looked empty, like empty wells of nothing. She didn't look like my mom anymore. I remember wishing that I wouldn't ever see her again. It hurt too much to see someone you love that sad. I got my wish. One night, a woman that lived in the apartment complex knocked on my mother's door. She was one of my mom's friends, few friends, and when she came knocking, my mother let her in. The woman disemboweled my mother with one of my mother's own kitchen knives. The woman then proceeded to disembowel herself. When the police entered the woman's apartment, they found her husband disemboweled as well. A huge Christmas tree stood in the corner of the living room, but it was in December. The husband's small intestines had been draped around the Christmas tree like tinsel. The Christmas tree also had a topper. Yes, the husband's private parts entangling testicles crowned the top of the tree like a Christmas star. The only thing that the police found in the woman's apartment was raw pork tenderloin stuffed with oyster on the kitchen tile. It sat in a bowl of flour and jelly. The woman didn't leave a note. Neighbors said that in the days leading to my mother's murder, the woman had been talking more and more about bizarre sexual dreams she'd been having about slug-like creatures. I have no idea why she killed my mother. My father and I were the only ones in attendance at her funeral, mostly from the fact all our friends had been murdered. When we got home from the service, all I wanted to do was cuddle with my kitten, but we couldn't find her anywhere. The kitten was a separation present from my father, like giving me an animal made up for the fact that he and my mother no longer lived together. A kitten named Firefly. He had a brown coat and blue eyes, just like Nathan Fillion. It was the perfect name because both my father and I loved watching fireflies. I remembered him saying once that he was one of those shows that would stick around for a long time. He was sure about it. I remember spectating that our postman, Simon, had taken Firefly. Simon was overly friendly to the neighborhood cats. He was always singing that Jennifer Page song, Crush, under his breath as he made his rounds. We gave up looking eventually, and I decided to go for a walk. I just wanted to walk forever. Eventually, I found myself at Jonah's house. I walked right up to the front door and knocked. I need to be with someone my own age. I need decided to have fun and quit thinking about my mom, my sister, and my missing kitten. Thankfully, Jonah answered, and not his mother. He let me in, and we hung out in his room. It looked exactly the same as it had back when I'd first been there. Same bed, same darkness, same beanbag chair. It even rolled over just like before. Jonah's mother liked to punish him by putting his dog in the beanbag chair. Isn't it funny he never saw Jonah's dog? In trouble again, I asked. Yeah, Jonah said, picking a scab in his knee. She put Gabriel in there again. Why did she do that? I don't know. We sat in silence in the darkness. It was nice. Every so often, Gabriel would roll one way or the other inside the beanbag chair. I leaned back against the wall and shut my eyes. I thought about everybody I'd lost. I thought about how helpless I was to stop any of it. Everything dies eventually, Jonah said. What? I asked. Everyone dies. I thought about my mother, Ivan, Zena, and Maggie. Thought about Abby. She was still alive. Not everyone, I said. Jonah just looked like he felt sorry for me. A lot of people thought that Abby had to be dead by now. Even I sometimes did, but I would never let myself say that out loud. Not everyone dies, I said. Jonah shrugged. Why are you being so mean? I asked. Jonah shrugged again. I stood up. Is that all you can do? Shrug. Jonah just picked at his scab. I felt all the anger and sorrow build up inside me. I felt it boil up and spill out when the beanbag chair rolled over again. I took a single step and kicked it out of frustration and misplaced anger. Gabriel yelped from inside. How's that? I yelled at Jonah. Do you like when I kick something you love? Jonah shrugged. You know what? You're a piece of crap, I said. I'm not sure I was referring to Jonah being so blasé or about my mother's death, or if I was referring to myself for kicking his dog. I stomped out of Jonah's room. I lost 3 things that day. My mother, Firefly, and Jonah. The last part. This is it. This is the last part. Read them or don't. It doesn't matter anymore. Once you start, don't stop. We're almost there. We're almost at the end. We've been through a lot together, you and I. I came to our nosleep for one reason, to jam my middle finger knuckles deep into your eye sockets. Do whatever you want with this, and I'll claw at the front of your brain one last time. Enjoy. Jonah and I were never the same after I kicked his dog. He floated away from Austin and me, and we never pushed him out, but we never made a point to include him either. We all finished 4th grade and started 5th. Looking back, I can't help but think that all of my classmates were in shock from the disappearances and violence. We were like little zombies going through motions. In 5th grade, the end of the whole mess started with 3 words. I'm a magician. It was a strange thing to hear at the time. All the talk then was about Harry Potter. Everyone at recess was either a witch or a wizard. No one was a magician except for Jonah. I remember my new friends gathering under the cherry tree at recess and diving into our houses. I'm a Slytherin. I'm a Ravenclaw. I'm a Gryffindor. No one ever picked Hufflepuff. magician, Jonah would whisper. We would all roll our eyes and pick up the sticks and twigs we would use as wands. Jonah would look at us with this strange half-smile on his face, and always say the same thing in that quiet way he had. Those aren't real wands. We would roll our eyes again and take off on our imaginary Nimbus 2000s. It took a few minutes to get our imaginations roaring at full speed, but when they kicked on, we found ourselves in another world. A world without teachers, or rules, or homework. A world where we could fly and cast spells and play Quidditch. We would list off, and the air would howl in our ears, as it only can when you're flying on a broom with your best friends. Higher and higher we would fly, playing Quidditch while dueling at the same time. Shouts of Epilyrimus mixed with the lookout for the bludgers, and there's golden snitch. Grab it. Would fill the playground as we flew, racing faster and faster over the playground until we were sweating and panting from the efforts. We fought, we played, we imagined. Inevitably, we would hear our teachers calling us, and we would drift back down from the heights of our imaginations. Our wands would once again become sticks from the cherry tree. Our brooms would become air. Our spells would become empty words that fell useless to the dust at our feet. And then we would see Jonah leaning against the trunk of the cherry tree, smiling that half smile of his as we headed back inside to the dreary chalkboards and subjects that made up our school and time existence. Around Christmas time, on a random Friday, something terrible happened to two kids in my class. Does your mom ever talk to herself? Jessie asked me at lunch that day. Jessie asked me. He was one of my new friends. He always chose Ravenclaw. I frowned. No, my mom died last year. Oh, Jessie said, sorry. It's okay. My mom talks to herself, Jessie said. I woke up last night and she was in my closet with the door shut. I could hear her talking. That's weird, Austin said through a mouthful of mashed potatoes. Jonah just snorted. Jessie didn't seem to notice. She keeps asking me if I believe in souls. Weird, Austin said again. Yeah, it worries me, Jessie said. I shrugged. It's probably nothing. I was wrong so often. Jessie turned to look at the girl sitting next to him. Are you still coming over? Austin, Jonah, and I all. Ooh, do you know that roller coaster way of saying, oh, that little kids used to imply love? Amber looked at the three of us and shook her head. Grow up. She turned to Jessie and said, yeah, I'll be there. When we went outside to play after lunch, we saw Jessie's mom sitting in her car in the faculty parking lot. She looked like she was talking to herself. See, Jessie asked. I put my hand on his shoulder. Maybe she just misses you. I guess, Jessie said. We went back to playing, but I could tell that Jessie's mind was still on his mom. On Monday, neither Jessie nor Amber showed up at school. Everybody found out what happened to them through Joey Wilson. His dad was a cop and Joey had eavesdropped on his mother and father talking about it. Jessie's mother made both children take 12 methadone apiece with their cereal that Friday afternoon. When they were dead, and I hope they were dead, when Finally, as if all that wasn't enough, she swallowed the big toes and slammed the kitchen shears through her temple. The 2 words she wrote on the wall were "I won." No one knew what that meant or why she did it. That was the only piece of darkness until the end of 5th grade when Jonah performed his greatest magic trick of all. He would vanish into thin air and never be heard from again. So it happened on a Friday. I remembered it was Friday because the next day my dad was asking me to Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, and I was super duper excited. Like everything, it all started at lunch. Jonah was sitting across the table from Austin and me. Jonah always sat across from us, but he quit speaking for the most part. Austin and I were talking about weekend stuff and munching on the rubbery school pizza with the crappy rectangle chunks of pepperoni. I'm a magician. I'll prove it, Jonah said. After Austin and I rolled our eyes, we'd been hearing how Jonah was a magician for the better part of a year, but he'd never done a single magic trick. No cards, no coin tricks, nothing. I'll prove it, Jonah said. Austin and I perked up. Okay, how? I asked. Everyone has magic flowing through them, Jonah said. But you can't prove it, Austin said. I can't too, Jonah said. I can show you your magic. I can show you real magic. Okay, Austin said. Go ahead and show me then. Yeah, I said, show me too. Not here, Jonah said. Come over tomorrow and then I'll show you. I will prove it to you. Fine, Austin said. You're on. Yeah, I said. You're on. School finished and the next day my dad took me to Six Flags. I completely forgot about going over to Jonah's with Austin. On Monday, neither Austin nor Jonah showed up to school. Their desks were emptied out and no one said a word about their disappearance. But inside my desk, I found a pencil box with a black ribbon tied around it. Written on the outside in red Sharpie were the words, "Open at recess under the cherry tree." I waited until recess, thinking it was a secret note from Austin, or some new sort of game, but it wasn't. I sat beneath the cherry tree and I opened the box. Cool wind whipped to my face as my friends shouted from the playground, flying on their imaginary brooms. Inside the box were 5 black velvet pouches and a note on top from Jonah. It read as follows: You forgot about Six Flags. I'm betting that Austin will too. I pulled out one of the pouches and opened it. Pinned to the outside was a note. This is a real magic wand. I pulled the knife out and set it on the ground. I opened another pouch after reading the note. This was Maggie's magic. Inside the pouch was something that looked like a brownish raisin with a black spot on one side. I read the next note. This was Zena's magic. Inside was a triangular stone that was round on one side and mostly flat on the other. It was painted like a hedgehog. The note on the next pouch read, Austin's magic. Austin's weird birthmark, a left ear fell amongst fallen cherry blossoms. That is when it hit me. I realized that the shriveled raisin was Maggie's eye, and that the rounded stone was Zena's missing kneecap. I stared at the last pouch, not wanting to open it. I didn't want to read the note, knowing it would only end in heartbreak. Tears poured from my eyes as I read the note pinned to the outside. This was Abby's magic. I shook out the contents of the velvet pouch and stared for a moment, unable to process what I was holding. As the cherry blossoms drifted down around me, I stared at Abby's heart, the bright green ribbon I'd given her in kindergarten, tied around it in a neat bow. The ribbon wasn't bright anymore. It was ragged and stained through in places. At the bottom of the shoebox was a letter. This is what it read. All I ever wanted was for you to be my best friend. All I ever wanted was a brother. It was always someone else, though, never me. My mom knew I was lonely, so she got rid of my dog, gave me a sister, your sister. But when she found out that I wanted you, she wanted to get rid of Abby. I told my mom that it was okay, that I was fine with it, but she knew I still wanted you as my best friend. And she did her best to make it happen. I kept Abby as safe as I could. I'd even talked my mom into letting Abby go at the end of 4th grade. We were going to set her free and move away. I gave you every clue I could think of. You knew where she was. Why didn't you come get her? I put my dog's tail in the pencil pouch. I wrote you that letter where the words were backwards. You knew why they were backwards too. Remember how my mom scared you in the mirror and I saved you? I'll be your best friend. Remember the circle. Remember me not having any friends. I'll be your best friend. What's flat and has a face on it? A coin. My mom told me to put the kneecap in Zena's mom's mailbox. I put the smiley face on the bottom because I knew that you would hear about it and know. My mom told me to put that cupcake in Ivan's lunch. I left another smiley face on it to remind you of the coin we found in my backyard. You knew and didn't do anything or tell anyone, so you kicked Abby after your mom's funeral. I knew that you were finished being her brother. You knew she was in the beanbag chair. You knew and kicking Abby was your way of telling me that we would never be best friends and that it was okay for Mom and me to play with her. I've always loved puppets. The police found Abby and Austin in Jonah's house. By then he and his mother had fled. Austin is found in the garage in a deep freezer. I'm told Abby was found glued to a chair with a hole cut in the seat. The room was filled with spotlights, all aimed at her. Her inside had scratch marks from Jonah and his mother's fingernails. Several dumbbells were found in a corner of the room. In order to accommodate their hands, either Jonah or his mother held one of the dumbbells above their head and let it fall 5 feet or so to impact and break Abby's pubic bone in multiple places. They put on a puppet show for each other by inserting their hand into my sister's magician I'd ever known. He showed me the magic that flowed through my sister and all of my friends, and then he disappeared forever. So, now you know everything. Maybe now you understand why I wrote all those things I did over the last few months. Growing up with that much death in your life, you have to do something to keep it from devouring you all. My therapist says that you have to understand the mindset of the person taking from you to truly understand the why of it all. My therapist says that talking about what happened will help, that talking about what happened will heal. It doesn't help though, and it doesn't heal. As I type this, I occasionally look into the mirror behind the screen of my laptop. My therapist looks right back at me, meeting my eyes, daring me to go forward. Once you start, don't stop. At recess, I always yelled that I was in Gryffindor, but deep down I knew that if I was wearing the sorting hat, it would pick Slytherin for me every time. Slytherin will help you on your way to greatness. As I am as stained as they come, and I'm living out of the dark lives of all those who have taken from me, I've come to a realization. There is power in darkness. Darkness is the light at the end of the tunnel. Darkness is the way through. Willy Wonka, Nicholas Troy, Lord Voldemort, John Wayne Gacy, dark heroes for a dark time. I felt the darkness growing inside over the past few months, and I finally feel alive again. I finally feel whole. I understand my purpose in life now. Hunting season has ended, and before you know it, it'll be killing season. It's time to make a snappy new day. Where are you paying attention? Once you start, don't stop. You can close your other tab now. I'm finished with you. This is the end. Soon you and I will dance through, and I'll show you your magic. Christopher Bloodworth. So, that was psychologically, emotionally, and just probably the craziest but most interesting story about a serial killer that I think I've ever read. I'm still not really sure. There's so many conclusions that one can come up with. Like, was he the killer the whole time? But no, Jonas and his mother were. I don't know. I'm interested to read about this story and tell you, because I think it's the first. That's why I read the first shorter stories in the beginning, because they all tied into the story. Like where the kid who came to school and his mother said that he was becoming more and more into this church, the Church of Stan. Well, it wasn't him, it was really his mother. And just how it all tied together in those first stories is crazy. I wonder if Bloodworth is his pen name. I'll have to check that out too. But they're wild, wild stories, and some of the best I've read. I know they were gruesome, but it was fiction, so try to keep it at that. It's like watching a scary movie, but it's fake. says at the end, if you were listening, once you start, you don't stop. Was he the killer the whole time? I don't know. Or did he know about everything? I don't know. Very interesting. There's a lot of questions it leaves in your mind. Like, and how things got twisted from the perception of one side of the story, like Jesse's mom, and then the other side of Jesse saying his mom was crazy. I don't know. And it had to be somebody that knew those kids and they trusted them. I don't know. I mean, some I think the murder is made clear, and then other parts, I don't know. It's really a psychological